Notice of this meeting was posted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act on April 17th at 5 p.m. The subjects to be discussed or considered or a time in which any formal action may be taken are listed below. And I do go on record that we have a quorum present. Trustee Shoppy will be joining us shortly as he's coming from soccer responsibilities. So with that said, if we could all rise. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. If you'll bow your heads for tonight's invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the opportunity to come together in service to our schools and community. As we gather for this meeting, we ask that you grant us patience, wisdom, and discernment. May you help us approach our discussions with open minds and compassionate hearts. May your wisdom guide our decisions. May those choices that we make serve the best interests of every student, teacher, and family in the Porte ISD. Let us work together with respect, integrity, and a shared commitment to the future of our students, our staff, and this community. May our efforts tonight contribute to an environment where learning thrives, equity is upheld, every voice is heard. We ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Danny, do you mind if we add an addendum to that and that we pray for good weather on Saturday for Civil
Yes, we will add that too. A lot of good vibes.
We all been praying all day. It's 3,500 today.
So the board will now hear those who wish to make comments or completed the return of public comment participation requests. This section will be conducted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act and board policy. Complaints and concerns for which other resolution channels are provided shall be directed through those channels. Do you have any speakers?
I don't believe so.
All right, let the record show we have no registered speakers, so we will go on to item 4, our administrative report and our 2023 accountability update.
Good evening, President Hanks, Board, Trustees, Superintendent Jackson. You read that right. It's the 2023 Accountability Update. I'm here to just give you a quick report on where we stand with the accountability rating from 2023. Just to give you a quick timeline of why we're here today talking about 2023. If you recall, back in 2022, it was the last time that we had our accountability rating published in the district. We had, in 22-23, we had STAR 2.0 released, which was the new assessment system. In 22-23, we also had the accountability refresh that hit us at the same time, if you recall. So that was a fun year, 2022-23. In the fall of 2023, we expected our accountability ratings from 23 to come out, but there was an injunction and a lawsuit that led to an injunction, and that held those accountability ratings from being published. In the 23-24 school year, we were anticipating an accountability rating at the end of that year, and again, there was a lawsuit filed and there was another injunction, and that prevented the 24 accountability ratings from being published. So here we are in the spring of 2025, and the case has made its way through the courts, and that injunction for the 2023 accountability ratings has been lifted, and the state has been cleared to release those accountability ratings to the public. So on April 24th, which is Thursday, the 2023 preliminary accountability will be released, and it's preliminary because there is still litigation, there could be an appeal, et cetera, and so they're calling it the preliminary accountability ratings. We will receive our 2025 accountability ratings in August of this year, and when we will receive 2024, we're just not sure. So we're just going to take the punches as they come. So let's talk a little bit briefly about what the changes were in this accountability system. The way that our campuses and our district was rated didn't really change. We still had 3 domains. We had student achievement, school progress, and closing the gaps as part of those accountability domains. What changed was how those domains were calculated. The biggest changes in this 2023 accountability system, number one, was the reliance on STAR 2.0. If you recall, there was a brand new assessment. The way we test kids all went online. We had a lot of unique, enhanced technological questions that really asked our students to answer questions in different ways. We had cross-curricular passages happening in the reading sections, and we had evidence-based writing grades 3 through 10. So for every grade level versus the 4th and 7th graders in STAR Pass. So that was a huge deal. The second major change for the 2023 accountability system was the CCMR weighting. So the college career military readiness component for our high schools changed in terms of the way it was scaled. So you can see here from 2018 to 22, an A rating or a 90 scale score meant that you had a 60% target number for your CCMR. You see that for the 2023 accountability, it changed dramatically. And so to have an A, now you had to have 88% of your students reaching that landmark. So that was a major shift in how that was scored. And then the third major change for the 2023 accountability is just the campus weighting. It used to be that all campuses were created equal. So we added them all up and divided by 13, but now the accountability for each campus is weighted based on membership of that campus. And so you'll see the big blue pie, that is LaPorte High School. And so you'll see that there are not all campuses and their accountability ratings or measures are weighted equally. So that was a major change. So those three big changes factored into the accountability litigation for 2023 and why those particular scores were held. So one of the reports that will come out on Thursday is the 2022 What If report. This 2022 What If report takes what we know, which was our last known rating, our last known data set from 2022, and it applied the new accountability system to those numbers. And so it took what we would have had. So let's say we were a B, and it takes the 2022 B, does the new math from the new accountability system, and then gives us the 2022 What If report so that we could see what that would look like under the new accountability. So you will see published on Thursday a 2022 What If. So if you take a look at what we have here in your packet, you will see what that would look like. So on the right, on the left, you will see the actual report card that we received in 2022. You will see that overall we were an 87, which was a B for our district, which is fantastic. When we took those same data points from that particular assessment opportunity in 2023, we applied the new accountability measure to it. You see that changed our rating to a B. So we would have been a B had the new accountability system been implemented with that set of data.
But it significantly had an impact on student achievements.
Correct. So you can see that the new accountability system is much more rigorous in the way it measures our accountability. So we would have gone from a B to a high B to a low B with the new accountability based on the data set from 2022. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on that?
Which is why the lawsuit was happening, because we felt like schools and all over and superintendents felt like that just wasn't fair the way they would start that process.
Correct.
It's a moot point now, but we're now sharing that.
Okay. So that is the What If report. So when we release these results on Thursday, this What If report will come alongside it. Okay, so we were, on the left, you'll see that was our last known report card grade. On the right is what would have happened if that same data set would have been applied to the new accountability manual.
Okay, so is it, but like for school progress, that's a big gap.
Yes.
Some of that's the data points, is some of it that we actually did have a drop in that area?
It means that the way that they calculated our scores changed in such a way that it weighted things differently. And so it made what we...
Thresholds to pass those things were higher.
It was the same scale. It was the same test. It was just presented at one scale and another.
That's correct.
Never mind, that's right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the data points are the same. It's just the way that we turn them out of the accountability mill changed. And so you can see that it had a significant impact on school progress, as you pointed out, and the way that that is calculated. And then student achievement, the way that was calculated changed. And then overall, it had a great impact on how our overall rating would be calculated.
So is it fair to say, like looking at this report, it tells us those are our target areas. We've got to look at student achievement to bring that.
Correct.
Right, because there's such a disparity between the A and the B.
Right. What it tells us is that the way we used to play the game changed significantly, and now we have to re-examine how we look at those areas.
Did they give us the new rules?
Oh,
Or
yes.
is it Calvin Ball? Okay.
Yes. They gave us the new rules. Part of the litigation was that the
We
rules
didn't have
didn't come
them
out.
at the time.
Right, no, I knew we didn't have them at the time.
Right.
That was part of the litigation.
I was just
Exactly.
curious if they bothered to give them to
But we
us.
have them now, yes.
The manual, we have, yes. So, what I want to share with you this evening are the preliminary 2023 accountability scores and reports from TEA based on STAR 2.0 data that was collected in the spring of 2023. Because this is going to be reported officially from TEA on Thursday. Okay? So, overall, for the district, we are, from 2023, we were a B at an 80, based on the new accountability targets. LaPorte High School, the largest percentage of our district pie, was at a 78, which is a C. Academy of DeWalt High School was at a 77, or a C. The junior highs, you will see there Baker was a C, a 74. LaPorte Junior, 81, a B. And Lomax Junior High, 83, a B. And then our elementaries, you can see the majority of our campuses were a B. We had Bayshore at a C and Rizzuto at an A. And over to the right, you'll see the proportionality pie so that you understand kind of representative how these campuses weigh in our overall district accountability. Okay? So, that was 2023. The scores and the accountability ratings for 2024 are still in litigation, and we don't know when they will be released from TEA. In front of you, you have a chart that looks like this. This is confidential. On the very far right, you will see a blue column. You have seen these numbers before, but this is our projections based on the data that TEA has released, so that you can see how we predict our 2024 scores will come whenever they do finally come, maybe in 2028. But I think it's important to note that as we have understood the new accountability manual, we have been able to make adjustments, and so our campuses are demonstrating positive.
Just making sure I'm reading it right.
Yes,
So the 23
please.
preliminary to the 24 projected, we're still seeing significant growth
Yes.
in a number of those campuses. We've got a couple that did a little backslide,
Yes.
but so that is using the new test, the
Yes.
new everything.
Yes, the new everything. Yes, that's a great point. So if you go backwards, look at the very far left, that's the last known accountability rating that we had published from the state. The 2022 what if is using the 2022 data with the new accountability rules. So that would have been what if we'd had that data point, what would it have been like on the new accountability? We are publishing on Thursday the 2023 preliminary data, and it's in that orange column, and then the blue column on the very far right is the projections that we have internally calculated. These are not official and therefore confidential. Okay?
But we've calculated them, and so has other districts, and at least we didn't get out and make whole public statements about it on the news and those kinds of things, but this is going to be pretty much on the money.
We do feel that way. When we looked at our projections for the 2023 compared to what was released, we were almost spot on. So we anticipate that these projections are almost spot on as well.
I think one of the big things that a takeaway, maybe not the biggest takeaway for you, board, but one of the takeaways is when public schools know the rules, when public school teachers know what the parameters are, we know we can support them and help our students. The issue has been every time we get close enough to where we're starting to reach mastery. If you look back at 2022, the district was 3 points from almost being an A. Right? We had learned the system. We'd been in it a few years. We'd learned the system. But what happens is once we figure it out and people really start doing well, it just seems like, and I'll just leave it at that, it just seems like the rules change and then we have to start from scratch all over again. And so I'm not making any excuses, but when we know the rules, when we know what the parameters are, we know how to help support our teachers know how to help support our students. The problem is sometimes in a 2-year transition, we're working in the dark, trying to figure out exactly what it is. And so we're just going to keep trucking along and trying to do the best we can. But to say that we're holding on to good scores based on all that our public schools have been through in the last 3 or 4 years,
mean,
says
this
a lot
is
about the
back to how
people that are
they're
in the
being
classroom.
released.
Sir?
Just how they're being released, we'll get 24 between 25 potentially, or we'll get 25 before 24.
Correct.
And then you gotta go back and try to pivot off. It's bizarre. And I understand the litigation and why it was done. I also understand, it's gonna be hard. You're not comparing apples to apples, right? So there's a degree of.
Right, which
But
is why.
This is encouraging. If we can take it and look at it in an optimistic, are we where we want to be? No, but are we moving that direction? Yeah,
Correct.
24. That's a
Correct.
pretty, look at Bayshore. Bayshore Elementary went from a 71 to an 87 based off this thing. That's massive.
It is huge.
That's not just a little, that is huge for them to see that. And got a lot more A's on that side. So that's encouraging to me, considering all the variables and factors. And I really, now I'm itching to see.
So it's weird to argue, like talking even about 2 years. I love that there's seemingly massive improvement from 23 preliminary to 24 projected. But if you take this what if column from 22 and look at 23, we backslid in a lot of these campuses, right? If you guys think this what if is a true measure, there's a bunch of them we went backwards on. So I'm just curious, like, how concerned are we about that across the board that it went down?
I think what I'd like to make sure we understand is that the green column is the same data set from the first blue column.
Right.
It's just two different accountability.
Right, so I'm saying using that accountability measure.
Correct.
So that's the same one for 23 preliminary? So you're basically on the apples to apples is what I'm saying.
So the 23 preliminary is based on a new data set.
But isn't that what if, like what?
The what if is based on the 22 scores.
So I think that's what you're trying to say.
But yeah, but you said like the what if is like,
down.
you're saying that would be the what if for 22 is based on what this 23 is.
The
right?
same accountability system.
Right, so what I'm saying, so if you put the what if and the preliminary, and you just look at those side by side, all but a couple campuses like went down. And so it looks like, to Danny's point, at 24, we're on the right track.
Yes.
But I'm just concerned that, like, what,
Sure.
do we have it's not perfect, but do we know
Sure.
why we went down?
So,
One of the reasons, if I may,
Yes, please.
and so just a piece of it, because we talk about it every day, was the accountability system that changed became twice as more rigorous than the former one that we had. And so if you're asking me to do the same, a similar test, but with a more stringent requirement, naturally, if we haven't been teaching at that level, you're going to feel some of that. And so
So it's not
it was a much more rigorous
due
test.
to the accountability.
Yeah.
It is somewhat due to the changes in
It
the
was a
test
rigorous
itself.
testing.
100%. And that's one of the things that has been, something we don't talk enough about maybe, but when you think about a traditional multiple choice assessment where we've all been through those kinds of assessments where you have a sentence stem and you have 4 answers, 4 choices. Now you have the possibility of 16 different types of questions beyond a multiple choice assessment. Some of them are worth 2 points apiece. They require students to think about the information in many different ways. And so we are learning how to assess students in the new ways. For some of us, we've never really embedded those kinds of new assessment types in our daily practice. And so that's been part of the work that we've been doing is, if we've got drag and drops as part of what's going to be on STAR, then how do we build drag and drop question types or multi-part question types into our daily practice to ensure that we're preparing our students the right way? So some of it, to your point, is learning about the new system and learning about the new assessment that is complex. And the other thing, we would be able to look at an assessment and say, okay, how did they test it last year so that we could predict what's going to be next year? But next year they might test it in a whole other question type. Like we haven't even seen it tested that way. So we're really trying to, analyze what does that mean for our practice in the classroom and how do we ensure that our students, the assessments that we provide our students as predictors of progress, how are we ensuring that they're well aligned so that we can ensure that our kids are where they need to be?
Were 23 or 24 the year that we went exclusive electronic where everybody went?
In 23.
23 is when all grades.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
And we
sir.
added the writing.
Yes. Yes. That was STAR 2.0.
I'm just curious, I know for a lot of kids, it's online testing is fine, but I know for some of our other populations, online testing is really, really hard.
Yes.
So is there a paper version for the accommodations for students?
The short answer is yes, but Jennifer's going to give you the more thorough answer. I love that.
I mean, because we do have so many students that are in special education.
Right, right. Well, so it's still allowable for students under special education or 504 that the art committee feels like they need to do the disability, that they can still do a paper test. So for example, as we're doing our STAR this year, we have one young lady who is taking it on paper, but it's due to a visual impairment. And even trying to blow it up or all that is still not being effective. What we try to do is try to do everything we can, though, to keep that online version, because there's so many different accessibility features and all that, excuse me.
Well, that's true. The online used to be our accommodation.
Right. That you lose that if you put it on paper. So we really try the best to keep it online, and we found that most kids have been successful that way.
Good.
Yeah, because is there any way, how do we quantify the kids that are struggling with the data entry part? Not much less the computation and the mental, but then struggle to just articulate on a computer because they're not familiar with.
Well, we spend a lot of time trying to get those.
No, I know what to do, but I'm saying, is there any way to quantify that?
No, but one of the accessibility features is for students, again, that qualify for that, is if they need speech to text where they can dictate it and it types it automatically for them. So there are those supports in there for those kids that tend to struggle and have a disability or something that prevents them from doing that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm like this.
Yes, but that's to your point, yes. It's not like texting, and that's one of the things we've found is we've got to go back and actually kind of teach them how to navigate the keyboard.
In third grade.
Needs to be learned in first grade.
I would just like to bring to our attention a little bit, just something that if we're looking at this and talking about the changes in growth, but also, where we maybe are seeing a particular class of students come through the schools, and you can definitely see where maybe we had some struggles in some areas, and so I'd be curious to watch and track that population and see how they grow, not just as individuals, but as a whole, and see what kind of progress we make on that. Because regardless of which elementary school campus they went to, they all came to the same campus there, and they split back up, and they all come together again, and then potentially split back up depending on staying at the high school or going to the academy. So I see a little bit of a trend there, and just maybe as we go forward in the actual accountability, we'll be able to see some progress.
To your point, in 2023, you can see the Baker number, and then when those kids matriculate into the junior high,
Right,
you can see that affecting the junior high number.
Yeah, that's where I immediately spotted it, but
Caught off on it,
yeah, you can kind of.
Those were our COVID kids. that grade level, right?
Yeah,
It
they're the
is?
ones that,
Yeah,
they're the ones that were entry.
Because essentially that
They were
group,
third
kind
grade
of
when
because
they
of the
did
changes that took place in curriculum, they essentially fell 2 grade levels behind almost, especially in math, right?
And that's why the state has had such a push on closing those gaps and accelerating learning, and we've been working very hard to try to do that as well. But to your point, it is a hole that we're really, across the state, across the nation, we're trying to continue to fill.
But board, we made it a point, and you didn't hear it, it came from the board tonight. We made it a point, we weren't going to get up and talk about the data and use the C word.
Right.
And we did not, right? Because we don't want to look like we're trying to say there's always an issue with that, even though that certainly has some issue with it. But we just wanted to kind of present the facts of where we are. And we've got a new system, and I guarantee you, we're going to learn that system.
Yeah.
And I think in another year or two, we'll be back up here saying, and they're ready for STAR 4.0 now. You know what I mean? Because every time we figure it out. I've been doing this a long time, and we've watched it just change every time. It seems like the state is catching on to it all. It just happens like that.
Especially CCMR is a perfect example
When
of
they
that.
moved the TEKS, like it used to be third grade TEKS, and now it's first grade TEKS. And
So we don't mind being held accountable, and we don't mind having the questions about it. We just want time to be able to implement the systems that we need to be able to help those youngsters and the teachers. Think about what the teachers are having to go through and having to learn how to change what they've been doing for the last 5 years. And that's what this is also about.
Are we offering workshops and things like that with teachers?
We're
so they
doing
can kind of, but I mean, I know you
trainings,
don't,
yes, ma'am.
at this moment in time, I'm sure you probably don't have a whole lot to, because you don't know what they're going to do next, but,
Well, actually,
okay.
one of the good things that did come out of the lawsuit is now we get information ahead of time from TEA. So they have already adopted the 2025 accountability manual. They've already put the 2026 accountability out for public comment. So now they have learned their lesson, it appears, that things are now more apparent up front. So-
This data that you're seeing, and I'm not trying to deflect, I'm just adding to the conversation that we're trying to share. The good thing is we have this meeting tonight where we can do this in a public setting and not in just a memorandum or something like that, where we can actually have a conversation. A lot of boards are probably not getting it like that. They're just going to get an update from a
I just
superintendent.
find it to be so, it could potentially be really demoralizing to our teachers and our students to see their, these kids work, and the teachers, they work so hard to try to pass this test, and then you get in there and look at it, because I can remember it was a big deal when I was working with the kids on tax that multiple choice tests would have 3 right answers. They wanted you to pick the best right answer, and that's just so hard for the kids.
Is this also the version that where I heard there was a lot of conjecture about the AI? So it was AI grading, 0
that's
points
right, I
instead of
forgot about
partial.
Generated scoring. So we have a plan for rescoring. We'll take a look at our scores when they come back and determine if there are student scores and essays that we need to re-examine. See if we can't see the AI, impact. But
Do you have
yes,
any
that is part
recourse
of.
if you were able to see it, or
Pardon?
do you have recourse if you bring it back and rescore it? And
Yeah, so they allow us to submit essays for rescore or even the entire assessment for rescore, and then there's a fee associated with that. If it's rescored and their score changes, the fee is waived. So we have to be very careful about who we refer for a rescore.
Right.
And we'll do that. We have a plan for that. But
Just want skin of the game.
Do we know, I know across the board, whole state of Texas is getting screwed by TA. Do we know, and that's, but do we know what our surrounding districts, do we have access to their data sets? And what I'm getting
Not
at.
till Thursday.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is Deer Park right now is currently recruiting heavily in Deer, every home in LaPorte got a thing, come enroll your kid in Deer Park. I guess hopefully they're in the same boat we are, but if their scores are substantially higher than ours, or they somehow have better numbers, then that's what we're mainly concerned. This doesn't concern me because everybody's the same, I'm guessing we're all. I'm really curious to see how we compare against.
Sure.
It'll come out Thursday. I think the Chronicle Friday, Jeff and board, I think the Chronicle's going to have a whole front page of this because it'll officially come out. And so we'll also be able to compare and see where we land with others as well.
And then it all plays right into the school finally.
The timing is impeccable, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
really think
it's
that
amazing.
that's going to start to dissipate. They don't need this narrative anymore.
Exactly.
No.
So my deal as we try to educate the public, and we know that people are listening and what have you, is I have 2 points. One is that, some of your larger districts, these scaling do not affect them to the same degree as a smaller district, especially your mid-sized district like ourselves, where you can absorb some poor performing students in those larger districts. They get lost in the numbers and they're all set. It is greatly amplified when you've got a small sample size. The other point is we have to educate the public to understand that what if situation needs to be screamed from the mountaintops. People have to understand that this score, we accepted these scores. That was the agreed upon result, the goal. We did that. That's what we did. When we didn't know how we were going to be graded, this is what we did with this. And it's such a disservice. It's diabolical for them to play this card on public education because it's all in an effort to kind of smear and continue to advocate for their position. I'm not trying to get into politics, but people pour their blood, sweat, and tears in this organization, and it just is not a accurate depiction of what is going on. And that's all I want to do is I want to advocate and make sure that everybody knows that I believe in this district. I believe in what the teachers are in the trenches, what they're doing day in and day out. The parents, the students, everybody that shows up and does what is expected of them. And when they're asked and told, they're following instruction, they're doing well. But it's too hard to hit a moving target. No one can do that. And so anyway, I'm encouraged by the 24 projected. I hope that those hold true because I think that's definitely an affirmation of what we all suspect is going on here. It's just unfortunate that it took this litigation to get to this point.
Thank you.
Board, I suspect by the summer, we'll get a 24 and a 25.
I
That's what I
suspect.
suspect. And so we'll have another conversation about this in a public meeting.
So the next big event is August 15th. We'll have the 2025 time, maybe, to your point, before the 24th. We'll see.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
We do have an action item or discussion item on the agenda tonight. Actually, let's wait until Russell gets here, if we don't mind. Is that okay? We'll see that. We'll go down to item 6 and we'll start that discussion.
You're going to get us worn out, Bobby.
Sorry. So we'll move on to 6 and discuss our compensation plan review and workshop. Before we do, I wrote some things just because I've been so scatterbrained lately, guys. If you'll bear with me one moment. But board, as we begin this discussion, I ask you to remember the aim of this meeting, to arrive at a consensus on the direction we want to see Dr. Jackson take from crafting this next budget. I know each of us would agree that we could never possibly pay our teachers and staff the wages they rightfully deserve. However, it is my hope for a team that we can pay them as much as possible within the confines of our fiscal constraints. Each of you provided areas that you would like to see explored. They were awesome. They were well placed and thoughtful, and I appreciate your time doing so. However, as I've discussed before, we must be concise as possible in our direction, and I urge each of us to remain committed to affecting the largest number of employees possible in the most meaningful ways possible. We possess a great synergy, and I'm proud of the work we're doing, and I hope we have a very productive meeting.
So, welcome Board of Trustees, Dr. Jackson. Tonight we will provide an overview of our current compensation plan, which is in front of you, while focusing on the main topics that y'all brought forth for us. So what we'll be discussing tonight is our hiring calendar. Ms. Jackson is going to walk through that so y'all have a better understanding of what happens each month as we go through and hire our employees, specifically teachers. We're also going to discuss starting teacher salaries, special education paraprofessionals, substitute teacher pay, behavior support assistants, police officers and security officers, potential legislative changes that relate to salaries, and our salary history and possibilities, and also a stipend review.
Stacey, before we move on, board, are your items reflected on that slide? We did communicate it. Everybody's good? All right, thank you.
Okay. So our team, I'm Stacey McDowell, you know that, I'm CFO, but this is just for anyone else who is out there. We also have Paula Jackson, who's our Executive Director of Human Resources, and then also Dr. Rhodes, who is our Director of Human Resources. So the three of us collaborated together to put this presentation together for you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Jackson.
Good evening, Board, President Hanks and Board, Dr. Jackson. Excited to share a little bit with you this evening, just as far as from the HR lens about the compensation plan and kind of the different areas that it affects. So like she said, we'll start with just kind of an at-a-glance on our hiring calendar. This is by no means an exhaustive list of everything that we do every month leading up to and during our hiring season, but it just gives you kind of a broad overview of some things that we do to help get our campuses staffed, and support all the things that need to be done. I will say that this process that I'll walk you through is very standard in most districts around us and probably in Texas and the U.S. So it's a very normal process, with the exception of maybe some things we do here in LaPorte. So kind of starts in December, and maybe even a little bit before that, where we have a couple of surveys that we participate in with TASB. We have our salary study and we have our stipend study. And so we go through, those are separate studies, and we submit all of our district data to TASB for each of those studies. And then they compile all of that data and they give that back to us in a report. And so we can see all across the region, all the different districts that do submit. There are some districts who don't submit data, so if they don't submit it,
they're not obligated to submit data.
No, it's optional. So I would say most districts do, and all of our surrounding districts do. So we can get a good picture of where they stand as far as salaries and all those components, and then for our stipends as well. So we always look forward to getting that data back so that we can start to review that, look at anomalies, look at trends, look at where we're right-sized, maybe where we're not right-sized, and then start to kind of compile some recommendations, talking with our team about, what we're seeing.
I would urge, the districts that aren't forthcoming, be suspicious of them. Either they're trying to hide that they're way under, or they're trying to hide so they can come in there and shoot after everybody's posted and do the, the $1 over everybody else's bid.
Right. That is a good point. Okay, then as we move into January, we start to have personnel meetings with each of our campus principals. And just the purpose of those meetings is just a kind of a winter check-in to see how they're doing, how their staff is doing, if there's any support needed or coaching or guidance, working with our academics team on, what the needs are. But part of that meeting is also to talk to them about if they're hearing or have knowledge of anyone who may be retiring. Maybe they've already started to have conversations with their principal about, I think this is my last year. I think I'm going to end. Or in some cases there could be some resignations that principals are already aware of. So we start to make notes of those things and start knowing, okay, we're going to have to be recruiting for this position or that position. And so those are just kind of our first initial talks with them. We also, in years where that is board approved, we have our early exit incentive program that is rolled out to our classroom teachers. And so if someone, maybe those same individuals that we're talking to principals about retiring or maybe not returning to LaPorte for whatever reason, we can let them know about that early exit incentive. They can participate by going ahead and submitting that resignation or that retirement letter. This year, the deadline was March 7th, so that gives them plenty of time to kind of think about those decisions, work with their campus to turn that in, and then we know right away, okay, we're going to be recruiting for that position. And so it allows us, and we are very thankful for that opportunity because not every district does that. It is a $500 incentive that they get, so it's not a huge amount of money, but it is something that allows us to understand what vacancies we have early, and it allows us to start recruiting for those. So we do feel like that is extremely beneficial. And then we begin to determine our spring recruiting events with the different universities and partnerships. In February, we start to advertise and post. You may have seen we post some generic positions for elementary, junior high, high school, with teaching positions and coaching. We also do some of those for special education. So kind of anticipating what jobs we might have available, but also just to start collecting applications because what we found is that in February is when people start looking and they start applying, and we want to have those positions posted so that we can start getting applications to share out with the principals. We do begin in February staffing meetings with principals so that we can start understanding what enrollment and roll forward numbers are going to look like for the campuses, looking at grade levels and content areas to determine what the staffing needs will be for the following school year. And looking at, okay, is there a need to add more staff? Is there a need that maybe we can trim staff members or whatever the conversations need to be? So we do that in February so that, again, we can understand what we're recruiting for. If we have a kind of a blind target that we don't know what we're shooting for, then we're not going to get the right people and we'll miss out on applicants. So that's a very important process. In March, we hold our LaPorte ISD Job Fair. We had that at Baker this year. We had a great turnout of a lot of very, very good quality candidates. We heard from our principals that, the candidates that we had coming through this year were very, very, we had lots of good certified people. We had, and all of our departments were able to be there too and recruit for their positions as well. So it was a very, very successful event. During that exit incentive, we're continuing to receive resignations and retirements, so we start to work through those. Posting individual positions, if we have, for example, if we have a CTE position that's very specialized, we want to post for that individually and make sure we're recruiting for the right jobs. And in March, we begin hiring for next year. Last month at the April, or earlier this month at the April board meeting, we had some positions that we were already that you guys approved for next school year. So we're really excited about going ahead and getting them their contracts and securing them for next year. Okay, moving on to April. as we're kind of doing tonight, compensation planning for the following school year, so that we're looking at all of our data, looking at recommendations from our campuses, our district leaders, and of course our board to determine what our needs are going to be for recommendations. We do, and I'm not sure if you all know fully about this, but we do have a voluntary transfer process for classroom teachers. You know, let's say if I'm a teacher at Heritage and I hear that there's an opening at Bayshore, that maybe I've really been wanting to teach 5th grade, but there's just not going to be an opening at my campus. I love my campus, but maybe I want to try something different. If there's a vacancy, they can put in for that, and their principal approves it and has a conversation with them, and then we can share that with the principals to know that we can fill some of those internally. So we do that as well. Another important thing that we are so appreciative of with our board is, as you recall, just a couple of weeks ago on the 8th, you approved for Dr. Jackson to have hiring authority for directors and below, so that, and really it's for our teachers, so that we don't have to wait on a board meeting to get them approved and get them a contract and have them sign off, and yes, they're coming to Porte ISD. And that is a huge thing because not every district does that. And that just shows the tremendous faith you have in Dr. Jackson and his leadership to allow him to have that opportunity to review and approve those. So that is a huge thing for us. We continue with our recruiting events and advertising and just supporting our principals through the hiring process. And then in May and June, we will finalize the compensation plan recommendations and ask you to approve those at the June 10th board meeting. And then finally, to end in June, we've, in the past few years, been having a second district job fair. A little bit smaller than our big one in March, but nonetheless, we want to have another opportunity to scoop up more applicants and have an opportunity for our principals to connect with more candidates. And then finally, in July, right before school starts, we are just continuing to onboard our new employees, welcoming them to the district, and planning for back-to-school training for our new teachers and our returning teachers, and making sure they're equipped, ready to go, and ready to start the new year strong. So that's an overview of our hiring season. Again, with a lot more things that are happening, but that's it in a nutshell.
Jackson, what's our onboarding situation? What does it look like? What's the time requirement? How long does that take to onboard?
Okay, that's a great question. So we are a fully electronic process. So once we have to receive a hiring recommendation from the principal after they've interviewed, checked references, and gone through their process. Once we receive that electronic recommendation, we have some approval checks that it goes through a workflow, which again is all electronic. And then Dr. Rhodes is our point person to make those job offers to our teachers. Of course, I help too, just depending on our workload, but he will turn those around, I would say 99% of the time, the very same day. So those applicants are getting a phone call from him, even if he may not be completely ready to, maybe we get it at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Friday, and he's going to at least call them and let them know we've gotten a recommendation. We're going to work through the salary offer, and I'm going to call you back. But again, we'll work on Friday night or on the weekends to get those jobs offered. We don't wait, because if they're applying with us and they're interviewing with us, they're applying in our surrounding districts most likely, and we just have to assume that. And we don't want to lose anybody over, we didn't call them until the next day, or we didn't call them until Monday. And so, again, with our hiring opportunity right now with Dr. Jackson, we're able to get that list to him that day, typically, and he can sign off on those, and we can offer them a contract very quickly, depending on fingerprinting and other requirements that have to happen. That could delay things a little bit, a few days, but for our part and our process, it's usually the same day.
A lot of our teachers board, they will have interviewed with several places already, and they're going to go with, they're a good teacher, that's why we made an offer to them. But a lot of them are going to go with whoever offers me first. Mm-hmm. Whoever gives me a contract first is who I'm going with. And so we realize that our competitors are doing the exact same thing. And so on any given Saturday or Sunday, you can come up here, especially during this time of the year, you'll see people here just still trying to catch up and stay ahead of the game with that stuff.
Meeting I just left for work, that was the entire urgency. Everything was predicated on urgency and all these other facets. But it is so important because we're in an immediate gratification world. They've got this, they've got technology, someone else reaches out and you miss an opportunity for, a superstar. So
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yes, we try not to let any time waste because we do not want to lose people. We want to get people, and it just sends a message that we want you in LaPorte.
Right.
And we're not going to wait weeks and weeks or days and days to get you that job offer. All right, the next thing I want to just share with you is our starting teacher salary information. Over on the left-hand side, you can see a historical view of our salaries from year to year, going all the way back to 2016. You can see that our current salary for 24-25 at the top is $61,000, and that's our current salary for this year. And then over on the right-hand side, we've just provided you with a list of comparisons for not all of Region 4, but just the ones in our area that, again, we have people applying. Yes, these are the people we're competing against. So you can see their starting salaries there against LaPorte's starting salary. And then our average teacher base salary, just with all of our teachers that are in our positions, our average teacher salary base is $69,707. So we just wanted to provide you with that information as well.
Small school.
Definitely. Okay, and we just wanted to kind of provide you also with just some additional earning opportunities that our teachers have. In your section of supplements in your compensation plan, that is all of our stipends that are offered. And of course, what I have listed up here is not an exhaustive list. This is just a couple of examples. We have a master's and doctorate stipend that are $1,000 each if you hold those degrees. We have provided you a list of the surrounding districts and what they offer for master's and doctorate. So those are listed there for you. Again, not an exhaustive list, but there are certification stipends that teachers can earn. There are UIL stipends that teachers can earn. And then there's just a wide assortment of academic and athletics stipends that teachers can earn, depending on their interest and what their principal may ask them to do or what they may volunteer to do. And then I've just kind of listed a few of those as examples. Department head, sponsor of student council. We have a CDL stipend. Not all districts have that. We also have a longevity stipend for coaches. So again, those are in your compensation plan, to see all of those. But we just wanted to go over a few of those.
But I'm correct in that if your job description requires you have a master's degree, then you don't get this time.
That is correct, and that's a great point. So for example, an assistant principal, it's required for them to have a master's degree. So if they were a teacher in our district and they were receiving that stipend, unfortunately, that would stop, and it's embedded into that salary as an administrator or whatever, counselor, could be any other position. That's a great point. The other ways that teachers can earn additional money is we're very proud to be a district of teacher incentive allotment. We're in our first year of data collection for cohort 1. That's about 86 teachers that this year are under that data collection through their T-tests, and then with STAR going on right now, that will collect their data for student growth and compile that data into next fall and then work through that process. So we're very, very hopeful and positive that many of those teachers will earn a designation and get extra funding. Our cohort 2, which will start for 25-26, we've already had several informational sessions for them, and that cohort is quite a bit larger. It's about 240 teachers. So overall, we'll have over almost 350 teachers that will be eligible for teacher incentive allotment. And again, not all districts are involved in that, so we feel like we're at an edge because it's a recruiting tool, it's a retention tool. We've had some applicants that have applied with us that are maybe relocating to this area. They're looking at our website and they're seeing that we're a TIA district, and they've applied with us, and so the word is getting out, is what I'm saying, and it's a recruiting tool for us.
And that may have, and we're not sure yet, but that certainly may have some bearings on how well this hiring season goes, because once teachers in the classroom are invested in that, and they know now this is something that I stand to gain should I hang around here, that may help us greatly in the hiring season.
Absolutely,
So I'm very excited about
absolutely.
that.
Because if they
everybody's
leave,
not really
they don't get paid, so they're going to want to stay and ensure that they get that payout. Okay, moving on, we just wanted to provide some information about our special education program, paras. This has been a topic of the last few years, and we want to just keep that at the forefront. So just some facts: we have 67 employees in the positions under the program paras, and I've listed those underneath for you so that you can see how many paraprofessionals we have in those roles. Focus being our biggest area, because those classrooms typically would have more paras supervising and helping and educating those students. Adult transition would be our 18-plus program that works with our students who stay on with us, having been in our focus program. So, compensation changes. We've provided some history of the minimums raised over the years. And then just most notably in 2021, 2022, you all approved for the minimum for the pay grade 3 to go from $12.99 to $14.31. So that was huge for us in not only recruiting but retaining those paras. And then this school year, the board generously approved a $500 stipend for those individuals, just recognizing the difficult work and the hard work that it does take to be in those roles. And so, again, those 67 individuals received half of that stipend in December. They'll receive the other half in May. And then finally, for our part, we just wanted to provide some substitute pay, not only our rates, but also our surrounding districts. I know you guys ask about that sometimes, so just wanted to kind of put that to paper. For our sub rates this year, level 1 is our 60-plus college hour subs, and that rate is $100 per day. Level 2 is a certified teacher, so they're fully certified. They could get a job with us as a teacher, but for whatever reason, they're subbing right now, and that's $125 a day. And then level 3 is our long-term certified. Now, that would be a certified teacher who is maybe substituting for someone who's on leave. Maybe they're out with a surgery or birth of a child. And so after the 10th day in that position, their rate goes up to $280 a day. And it is retroactive back to day 1, as long as they continue to stay in that position.
Board, this is the first district I've ever worked in where I saw that salary for a substitute.
I'm looking at it, comparing it to all the other
I've worked
districts
in
and
other
thinking,
places.
wow.
It's not even
Large districts,
touchable.
I've never seen that
It's not
before in
even
my life.
touchable.
That's pretty impressive.
And we have a good pool of subs that are willing to do, of course, and our certified subs are great, and they're always willing to pick up those jobs. And some of our long terms, they'll finish one job and they'll go right into another one because the campuses know and they work with, you can plan ahead on getting those people secured.
Does
So
this include the subs that we have, like sometimes at a campus, like they go every day? Or is it, there's some subs that like they're at the high school every day and they fill in with, or is it just one?
No, it would have to be in one position.
Okay.
And the reason why, some of you may be wondering, well, why is it so high? Well, they're acting as a teacher. The full-time teacher, they're doing grades, they're lesson planning, they're contacting parents, they're attending training and meetings. They're basically a teacher in stance, if you will. And so we value that, and we want our educational process to continue. So we just provided you, again, with some of the surrounding districts' rates. And just so you know, as an aside, we do have about 200 substitutes on our active roster right now. So again, they're substitutes, so they may not want to work every day, but we do have a healthy pool of substitutes. And then just again, with substitutes, these are just some things that Dr. Rhodes and our team have kind of been talking about and thinking about in terms of moving forward into next year, looking at maybe perhaps having a middle rate for subs that have a degree. And so having, whereas our non-degreed subs are making 100 a day, maybe the middle rate making 110 or something of that nature, and then a certified one would be the third level. So, because we do have quite a few subs who have a degree, but they're making the same as someone who doesn't have a degree. So that's one idea that we have. And then looking at possibly higher pay rates for Mondays and Fridays. Maybe a $20 increase on those days just to kind of incentivize that, because Mondays and typically Fridays are really where we can struggle sometimes because of athletic events, other, CTE, field trips, things that would require a sub that would be out of the norm. So just looking at some of those, in addition to our sub recognitions and the other things that we do to incentivize them to keep coming to LaPorte. So,
Well, I appreciate the
yes, sir.
ideas and the creativity. I don't know, well, obviously you were there, but we're really trying to look outside the box in some creative ways. It's encouraging to see, where we stack up to all our neighbors, which is fantastic. But we don't want to rest on that. I do appreciate those are creative solutions, I think, that are viable and
Absolutely.
and easily to implement and won't break the bank possibly.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, well, that part is going to conclude my portion, and I will turn it over back to Ms. McDowell for the rest of our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome again. So we're going to start off, this is a new position, opportunity to help our elementaries. This is a behavior support assistant. So it would be a paraprofessional trained to intervene in the classrooms that would be hired at the district level to provide consistent and ensure training capacity is streamlined so that everyone is trained the same way and they can handle whatever instance happens in the classrooms in a unified way.
So let me just say,
Yes,
as you begin, thank you for that. We know that there have been instances and are instances where something happens in a classroom of 22 and we remove the whole 21, and instead of removing the child, we want to be able to leave the kids in the classroom and have somebody to be able to come in and do some of those things with the child that needs the extra support, should the board decide that this is a good idea. Okay, so we wish we could have 7 of them, but I believe 4 of them certainly could be a good start to kind of, supporting the 7 elementary campuses. So we can have more conversation about it as she goes, but I wanted to kind of lay the context of some of that, and I've talked about that with y'all in my board updates.
So as Dr. Jackson said, it would be 4 positions that would be shared between the 7 elementary campuses. We would put them in our compensation plan as a pay grade 3, 187-day calendar employee. So therefore, with their midpoint salary and a benefit, it'd be a $30,000 salary for that position, and the total cost for 4 would be around $120,000. Questions for her? Okay.
Somebody might ask, well, what are you going to do about the secondary campuses? I know somebody's probably thinking that. Well, with Mr. Wicklet being our coordinator of safety and security, he helps to supervise the hall monitors at both the junior highs, Baker, and the high school. When we do feel like there's a need to have additional support, there are 4 or 5 of them at the high school, and oftentimes we'll just go pull a couple of them and ask them to go support one of the junior highs. And so we've got a plan for that already. We don't really have a true systematic plan for the elementaries right now. We've sent those guys to the elementaries, but it's a little hard to send this big old tough rough and guff guy from the high school to go look at elementary kids. So we would love to have somebody in that role that says, here's a person that is going to be here to help support teachers in that role. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 comments on this. Do we feel like the pay grade that we're assigning to this job is appropriate for the job that this person is going to be doing? Because that's going to be a very hard job. And secondly, I don't see how we're going to share between campuses when that kind of need is instant and needed right then? Does somebody have to drive from Bayshore, even to LaPorte Elementary, or to College Park, or to Heritage, or whatever? If we're going to do this, I think we should have 7. That's just my
And this was just a recommendation,
Right.
so the board has the right to do that. This was just our recommendation on
Yeah.
saying, here's an idea, because we know
Sure.
it's a problem.
Sure.
Okay? So we welcome that.
Who would they work for?
They would work for the campus,
But
but they would answer, we would help with
Who
that.
would train them?
Mr. Wycliffe, and we would have Miss Landry, is it Landry?
Yes.
From Region 4?
Yes.
I mean, we've got some
Kathleen.
folks that know how to de-escalate. We need somebody that can have that. Help me understand what you're
Well, I was just
concerned.
making sure that they were not going to be under special education.
No,
because then they would be-
absolutely not.
That would be.
Absolutely not.
So the other
Because
question,
we
though,
already
is-
have support staff.
I think what I'm hearing though is we're going to react to a bunch of stuff. I would like to know what we could do to be proactive so that our teachers understand how to de-escalate things themselves. Our teachers understand how not to escalate things themselves.
And so Catherine Landry has been in our district now for 2 years. She gave the board a presentation several months ago now. That's been a 2-year relationship. We're not.
And she's
going
training
with it.
teachers?
She's training teachers. And so it takes time. And Karen, you've been in this district a long time as a professional educator. You know, we train a whole swath of people, and then throughout the years, people move on. And so you have to start all over as if you never really talked about
I
that.
think I worry
And so-
because I think the reason we have so many special education referrals is that we really, I know this is true because I'm still hearing it from teachers. Yeah, but we want them in special ed so they have to deal with them. And so as long as we are not training teachers and even kids, we even have to train the kids on how to de-escalate themselves, especially our little ones, you know. Once that could really help us not to have to evaluate so many students, putting them in special education, when in reality what they really needed was just to learn how to control themselves. These kids are coming with a lot of trauma. You know this. I'm not saying you anything you don't know, but I feel like that we need, you know, there's so many other opportunities out there, you know, for what is it called? It's not purposeful discipline. It's
Positive behaviors.
no.
CBIS.
Wait a minute, I have it written down because I was looking it up. It's the conscious discipline. You know, and teaching teachers how to make sure their classes are set up with a routine so that kids know what's going to happen, and a lot of those behaviors don't start.
So I won't say that Catherine Landry uses that terminology because I'm not in all of her trainings. But I've got people in here shaking their heads in the back because they're in those trainings.
Okay.
She's training our people.
Okay.
But when you don't reach critical mass in a year, and Karen, you know
That's
that. We don't reach, and we certainly don't reach critical mass when people come and go. And we hold on to a whole lot of folks. But the teachers that struggle for the most part, the most with behaviors are generally our brand new teachers, our younger teachers. And so that's who we started her with now for 2 years. We don't want this to sound like it's a reaction, but we're just starting it. So we're just trying to pitch it to you, because once we pitch it and you decide what do you want us to do with it, then we come up with an entire program of, it's not reactionary only, it's training, it's all of those things. If you say you want one on every campus, I don't really have an issue with that, but I didn't want to sound like I was just kind of throwing out there, let's just put one out there.
I think that in
Well,
order
and I'm
for this
okay
to be
with that.
successful, there needs to be one on every campus.
I think it would be it'll be welcomed. I really believe it'll be welcomed. But I also think it needs to be done well, and I also think we need to get the right people in place for that. Sometimes getting the right people is not how much the salary is, but it certainly has something to do with that. But we also have to train them properly, and we have to make certain that there is a system by which we do this. One campus can't have them counting paper clips, and the other one has them doing lunch detention. You understand?
Yeah, no,
and
you're
so
exactly
that's
right.
why Dr. Jackson needs that to be supervised from the central level, so that at least I can still say, hey, what's going on with this group? So that we don't hear people saying, I can't get any help. Does that make sense? And so, board, we just are trying to throw out some ideas because we know this is an issue.
Well, and until we reach critical mass in the training that we're doing, we've got to get some immediate help, because this is affecting the education of other children. And that's not fair to those
It's also
children.
affecting the morale of teachers, and of course,
Yes.
as we know, they're,
Absolutely.
How much are we paid on Ms. Landry? Like, do we have an idea, like, the salary range on that one?
It was a consultant contract. Jeff, I can get it.
Well, I'm curious because, I mean,
Yeah.
to your point, you brought up the finances of it.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm doing the math in my head. We pay my front desk receptionist in my office $14.50 an hour.
Right.
So essentially, it's about the same, probably a little bit more than $30,000. But as much as I love her stage in career is, she's not going to be training anybody, right? Like, she's getting training. So if I'm reading this correctly, these people will be going out and getting trainings and teaching and.
Well, and it'll be in-house, but we plan for Ms. Landry and others to come here to do that work for us.
I appreciate it sincerely that you guys, this is the first time I've been, crying for, I love this. But I agree with Deanne and Karen that, like, to be successful, I mean, you already have the thing in our district, right or wrong, that people think that, like, certain campuses get privilege over another. I'm not saying that's true, that is an impression.
And we don't want that. We don't want
I would
that.
hate to see that happen.
This was our conservative approach to pitch an idea. And so I'm waiting on you to tell me, well, all you have to do is say, Jackson, we want 7, all right?
To that point, Danny, what is at the end of this meeting, are you wanting us to get a list of all of these things so you can put them in the comp plan?
Yes.
That's right, yes, sir.
But what we agree on at this
Tonight,
meeting,
we will bring that back in a budget.
And we're going to vote on it.
Right.
We shouldn't be making adjustments at that point.
Right.
No, that's-
You're gonna tell us now so that we can go build a budget.
should be making notes
Right.
of, if we want to do this, we need to make a note.
So if it's 7
Right.
and you'll have consensus, that's all I need to hear.
It seems to be that
Yeah.
we do have consensus.
I
on
wrote
that.
it. I wrote it
I
down.
think 7 is good.
I think not only is it, I think it's symbolic, I think it is a sign of, look, we understand your plight and what's going on the campuses. We're not tone deaf, we're very aware. And we're trying to throw everything at these situations that we possibly can throw. And this is just another out-of-the-box type that not everybody offers. We already have a police officer on every campus. We've got all the security measures, but student behavior is problematic across the country. So if we can be a trendsetter and say, look, these are the things we're doing, because if they're there to mitigate or de-escalate situations, there's going to be a lot of times they're not having to do that. And the better they are at their job, that's going to become even more infrequent. So then they can possibly do some outreach, some mentoring, some try to prevent some of those situations. So,
And to Karen's point about, preventative, this will give our counselors, it seems, a little bit more time to possibly, because I feel like this
That's true.
position would actually,
Right.
They won't be the ones in the classroom.
They won't be the ones in the classroom.
so our counselors would be able to work on some of that side.
We just need to make sure they don't use them as a sub.
yeah,
Well, but this is all new, so I promise you, we're gonna spend this summer now working on what the framework should look like.
But I think
And there are
that-
districts that do this
I
already,
think
so
as
we
long
can
as
go
they're
and
not,
find that
as
out.
long as they're not designated to special education, because
They're not.
then the problem is they really can't help them.
Right.
What are we giving it at pay grade 3?
And to address that, we chose pay grade 3, again, as a starting point, because that's where all the classroom aides, that's the highest that the classroom aides go. So when you go to pay grade 4, then you have, you find
There's one
more
thing-
secretarial and things like
On
that.
page 22 on the comp plan, there's 187 day aid district behavior para.
And
Is that
Did you
the,
add that?
that's one that would
Is that
be in
one?
special
No, we haven't
education.
added
but
it.
Right.
If I'm understanding.
No, we haven't
correctly-
added it yet, but no, and that's a different position. I'm not sure what position that
and if I may, on an issue, a position of this nature,
It is, but
they're not, I'm not trying to undermine or undersell it at all. They don't have the confines of being stuck in a position at this time to do these tasks, to be in this classroom, those times. There's some flexibility involved that I could justify that salary in terms of their requirements is whatever we craft, right? But at
and it's
this
gonna
point,
be behavior management.
it is, and they're gonna have some intense situations, no doubt. But they're not every day, all day, like those classroom teachers that are in the confines dealing with that. Just something to consider, because again, this is something that we're trying to
Right.
be widespread. I don't think we can, it's a lot easier to go up than it goes backwards.
I think having 7 of these on every elementary campus is gonna be huge, and I think we're gonna have to get to work right away if this board decides this is what you want us to do, so that we can have some parameters set. Because again, sometimes it may just be, you need to go sit next to Walter for a while because he's getting a little edgy, right? But then the next classroom, I need you to remove this kid because I can't get him to behave or I can't get him to
Well, I
stop.
guess once we post it, and if no one applies, then we'll know the salaries.
Yeah. Well, so my
We will.
question is, so we've got a BSP aide, which is, they go into classes and deal
Right.
with behavior,
Yes,
and their starting salary is $21,000.
right.
So
Well, it-
all of our behavior specialist aides are going to be.
Well,
trying to get that
there's,
job.
that's their,
We want the
Right.
best of them, so, you know.
we
that's
took the
okay.
midpoint.
Okay. Oh,
So,
okay.
right, so it would still be the 21,000 at the start, but we took it as a midpoint because
Okay.
we're hoping to get people who
With some experience.
Who comes
who
with
has
some
some type of
experience.
experience.
That's a good point.
Okay.
But Karen, you're right, we wanted to delineate SPED services versus regular ed. Because the issues
Right.
we've talked about in this board for the last 3 or 4 years. I've been
they're
here,
about regular.
These were
It's general
regular
ed.
ed students. This was not necessarily always a SPED child.
So in
And
a
so we're trying to
situation like
answer that.
this, would these, how would that, just because this may not even be relevant right now, but would these guys be trained for the, what's it called, the?
CGI?
Yeah, so they would be trained in that.
They would have to certainly know how
Okay.
to
Okay. That was just
train a
making sure.
child,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
You know,
That's what my mother
but it's gonna be
was.
de-escalation, some of the similar things, but since we're not paying them through the federal funding, we'll be able to
They
deal
don't
with
have
the
to have,
regular.
they don't have to have the
And that's the
paperwork. in order to
paperwork
get
that
the
we're working.
services.
Not having-
That's what's important.
So I think it's fair that this was definitely one of those items. So
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Good. Okay, another conversation that was brought up was the police officers. So the police officer at our campus, they're not our employees. They are all contracted employee that provide the security for our students and staffs at each of our campus. So we have two different groups. We have, at our secondary campus, we have contract through our city of LaPorte. So that provides us with 1 sergeant and 6 officers that are at our secondary campuses. So this contract began in the 21-22 school year. It expired the previous year, and we added 2 extra additional years to it. We extended it. So it will actually end at the end of next year, the end of 26. So in fiscal year 2024, that contract cost the district $636,500. And so far in fiscal year 2025, it's $692,000. And the reason why it's increased is they base, inside the contract, it bases what the pay is for the next year based off of last year's. And so if there's been any kind of contractual or pay changes, then we have to also honor those changes. So then at the elementary campuses, we have contracted hourly employees that we pay $50 an hour. And so they are, our hours worked each day are, so the elementary is for an 8-hour period from 7:30 to 3:30. Baker, 6th grade campus and the junior highs are 7:45 to 4:15. In our high school, 1 officer, they split, 1 officer between 6:30 to 2:45 and 1 officer 6:45 to 3 p.m. And one of the questions is, well, for the elementary, that is their second job. That's not their primary job. For the ones that are at the secondary, that is their primary job. So the ones that are elementary, you might have 2 officers splitting a day because depending on when they are have to be at work and clock in, so there might be some stagnant times. But we spoke to Sergeant Larkey and how does that time get covered? And they have implemented a process where either Sergeant Larkey or one of the other secondary officers will come over and be there to fill in at the elementary level.
What was the question for this to be brought up?
So I brought that up. Thank you. I'm not advocating that we raise the pay. Eventually that'll have to happen, right? Because the way the world is. What I'm saying is that, so with elementary in particular, there have been instances a couple times that I know of where if something's happened, it can happen any time, but it's happening typically with drop-off and pick-up lines. We've had several instances where the officers have left their station before the pickup, right? And so when I looked into that, it was because the way that the officer shifts in LaPorte Police Department, kind of how it translates. And so we're looking at it right now. So this is only elementary, right? So 7:30 a.m. I believe the tardy bell is at 7:40. Does that sound right?
7:50.
Okay, so but the
7:40,
bell rings at 7:40.
Yeah.
So, but like in the junior high, so that's literally 10 minutes for the bell rings. Baker, it's 8:25, and so they're there for a longer period for the drop off, and then at the pickup as well. And so, I'm not advocating that we spend any more money on the hourly rate, but is there a way that we can ensure, at the very least, we need to have officers there?
But Larkey, and I'm not trying to say he's said he's going to fix everything, but we visited with Sergeant Larkey, and he said that he would make certain that he tried to arrange coverage in the interim of between a person going to work and getting to their regular shift.
Yeah, no, I know, but I bring it up for budgets because like trying to, like I know because part of it may be say like, again, I'm not saying this is a scenario, but you add on the elementary 15 minutes to the morning and 15 minutes to the afternoon, an extra half an hour a day, right? I know there's a cost associated. That's why I wanted to talk about in the budget process.
We're open to that.
Yeah.
Just
We
because
have no problem
We're
with
not
adding.
trying to pay somebody to be
Right.
there.
No, I know.
It's just one of them's going and another one
Seems
has
like
to
most of
come.
some of our serious parent incidents occur during that time period.
Go up to-
You're right.
And it's true that sometimes there's not necessarily an officer, it could be that the officer's not there.
If funding is an issue there, we'll have another conversation with Officer Larkey and making sure. But if funding is something that we need to do, I'll bring that back to you all and say, here's what we need to do to increase that so that we can make certain that that's not.
Somebody got that time period covered.
half an hour, 15
Right.
minutes.
But that's what it is.
That's all I'm asking.
That's what it is.
And that's not a problem. We can absolutely have that conversation. He
We can
just,
make that happen.
it would be upon him now to, along
provide
with
the
our,
coverage
to
for that.
fill it.
Yeah. We don't have a problem paying it.
Absolutely not. We will absolutely be happy to pay that.
So we'll have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So along the lines with this, and I don't know if it falls under this or not, but, previously we had DARE officers, okay? And Officer Stanley started as that, transitioned to, being one of our resource officers and everything. I don't know how that was set up before. I don't know if it was a volunteer thing, if it was a contractual thing. I don't know how that happened in the past when we actually had a DARE program. But if these officers are on campus, not to ask them to do more for the pay that they make, but can we not have a DARE program on every campus?
Well, yeah,
something
she's
to that
just saying
extent is what I'm saying.
what could be some teaching opportunities. for
Because
them.
what I feel like is, that, they're building relationships with the students anyway. My kids love their resource officers. Like, they can tell me everything about them. So using that relationship to plant that seed that we used to get in our programs, and again, that sets that report back short because we haven't had that for a little while. Just, again, those extra relationships with those officers in the time that we have them.
Dr. Larkin,
They teach class?
No, not
No,
just in class.
just
Just like Dare used to.
opportunities
they used to
for
come in
relationships.
And have
Incidental opportunities.
I mean, heck, it could be during lunch, I don't know, some sort of time where they're able to,
Not just hanging out in the front office.
yeah, but it be
No.
something that has a little bit of merit to it about good behavior, not behaviors, but good positive things.
I guess you're walking a fine line though. If we're doing it out of the goodness of their heart maybe, but if not, you're gonna have to put that into a
But I'm saying,
contract.
how was it set up before, when it was Dare, you know what I mean?
There
It
was
was
already
through the
being
DARE
phased out when I got here.
Okay, it was a grant.
Yeah.
Okay.
But everything that you're saying about what you want that program to be or how you want the campus officers to perhaps be more involved, that's a conversation that we could have with Sergeant
I
Larkin
agree.
and with the police department. These are what our wishes are, and this is what our parents want to see. So we hear all of that, and we will move forward and let you know how it goes.
I mean, maybe it's not a class, maybe it's like they do, the fire department comes and just puts on a program, maybe they have something similar to that.
Sure.
I'm just,
Just
that, again,
being
those
visible on
relationships
campus
are
and
very
using
That's a very good
opportunities
suggestion.
to walk up to a kid and say, hey, I like the way you handled that. Or
So moving on, we wanted to provide you with our 2024, so that is finalized, obviously, and then our 2025 as of April, how much we've spent on these different pieces. So athletics would be, of course, working the games and security at different games. Extra duty for the police officers would be, you can see it's not in April. In April so far, it's about $1,700. Well, most of that happens in prom and graduation, so those expenses are coming. Our campus officers are what is at the elementary level, and then the city of LaPorte, that is our secondary level.
This really isn't, in the grand scheme of things, that much money. Think
Okay.
about what a benefit it is to have on campus. Campus officers at
I think it's a heck of a
$391,000.
lot of money that was mandated by the state that they pay us $10 a student to
Well,
do
that's
this.
not
It is
what
a
I'm
heck of a
saying.
lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the safety of our students, $1 million, in total is a lot. But campus officers, $391,000 to have them on every elementary campus is pretty good. We just spent $350,000 on behavioral specialists. I don't need
Well,
anybody to
not
agree with
quite.
me.
Not quite, not quite.
But hopefully we get some reprieve from the state,
Oh, I didn't
right? Like now that
That is-
great, amazing job for the past.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, and there is some of that built in, and we'll discuss that.
They're going up to $14 a student instead of
210.
But one of the bills says they'll double. So $15,000 a campus to $30,000 a campus. But we'll take it gladly and happily.
Yes.
Because there's
And move
an
forward.
assurance that our staff and our parents have when they see offices
Right.
on
Oh,
those
yeah.
campuses.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
can't really put a
You
dollar
can't,
on
that's,
it.
I think that's what makes it good.
You can't put a dollar on it.
Dan can.
I just get mad at unfunded mandates.
But I will say,
That the
don't-
school districts have to pick up the.
and not all school districts did it. And I'll sit here and say how proud
lot
I am
of
of
them
this
did.
one.
A lot of them did not.
We stepped in that space and did it. And I'm proud of it.
And a lot of them aren't, they don't have the ability to. Like, they just don't have the officers around to be able to do that. So again, you're right, we're very fortunate. Okay. So moving on to the next topic of the fiscal year 2026 salary increases, we want to provide you a historical information of what the board has approved the past 6 years. So starting at the top in 2019-20, all the way down to last year, 24-25. So this is, last year was a 3% raise that the board approved. The year before that, a 2% raise, and so forth and so on. So I just wanted to give that to y'all for reference.
And before we move on that
Sure.
slide, is there,
Yes.
'cause that is the one thing that really didn't come up in our little conversations was the percentages. Like, what is, can we just throw up like what you
Well,
have in mind?
if I may, if you just wait for a minute. And, I'm not trying to be disrespectful anyway, but it's going to be covered. It's going to be covered quickly. What that tells me is that Mr. Hanks has not looked ahead in his test. Has not looked ahead in his test.
Follow instructions, Dean.
I like this.
I like this historical reference though, because
Yes, this
sometimes
is
it's
very
hard to remember, no, last year we did that. No,
Right.
I will never remember.
So that's there for your reference. And
Thank you for that.
Okay, of course. So, speaking of potential salary legislation, so our House Bill 2 is that is really the counteract to the vouchers. So, if vouchers pass, then hey, House Bill 2, and so they, a lot of this that's in House Bill 2 was discussed 2 years ago, and then it was thrown away because vouchers did not pass. So therefore, since we're playing kindly in the playground, right? House Bill 2 would be a tremendous help to every district in Texas. So it's passed in the House, it's in the Senate right now for review, and they will also review and vote on it, and then it'll go to the governor to approve. So as we know, June 2nd is the end of the 89th legislative session, but that doesn't mean June 2nd the governor goes in and approves everything and signs off and makes everything law. He has actually till June 22nd to do that. So, but we are hopeful because this has gotten further along than it ever has in the past couple legislations. So what does this mean for LaPorte? So we have two different companies that we work with that are consultants that help us navigate through all this legislation and what is that truly going to mean for LaPorte and for every district. And so one of them is Moat Casey, and then the other one is our TASBO Center for Finance. So we belong to both, and so they'll take the information for House Bill 2. They both look at it a little differently because I don't know if y'all have ever actually looked at a law or a bill and how it's written and the language of the bill. It is very wordy and that, yes, it's very wordy, but it's hard to follow because it seems to contradict each other this way and that way. And yes, sir, purposely. That's great. So both of those, so Moat Casey and TASBO, came together and they had two different calculations of what it would mean for LaPorte. So I kind of took an estimate of both because some of them they were spot on the same and some other things they were like a little bit off. But again, this is still just in the House. When it goes to the Senate, everything's an estimate. The Senate's going to say, well, I don't like that wording and I'm going to take this out and I'm going to add this. And then when it gets to the governor, they're going to add a lot of more bills to it, and then we don't really know what we're going to end up with. So, but right now, what this means is it would be approximately in state funding, that would be an additional $3.8 million of funding for LaPorte ISD. So part of that is the increased basic allotment from the 6160 to 6,555, which is an increase of $395 per student. Again, and that's based on your ADA, that's not enrollment. Again, there's a bill out there for that, but I think it might have died down. I don't think that's going to go through.
I've heard it's not
It's lost it.
Yes,
Not got any legs.
I agree. We also have some increased security and then student population allotments. So special ed is a big one that they've realized that in every district, special ed is, our populations are growing, and that needs to be funded because they are giving us these mandates that we need to provide the best services we can.
Disproportionately in LaPorte ISD, we're growing,
Because we do it so well.
clearly.
It's been a problem for years.
Yeah.
Not a problem. It's been a good 3 years.
So that is part of the state funding increase. And they're actually, one of it too, is they're going to provide a special education evaluation allotment. So just every time you do an evaluation of a student, you would get a certain amount of money. So they approximate that to be about $255,000. Another that annually would come to LaPorte that we don't have. So another wonderful thing that would be very helpful and not many districts get would be this regional disaster insurance allotment. And so LaPorte would get $1.2 million.
That would be awesome.
And it's only for certain districts that are on the coast. So our neighbors next to us will not get it. But because of where we are right there, we would be a part of that. So the approximate gain what they do is they're going to look at the gain of where we are right now, the money that we have in 25, versus if all of this stuff in House Bill 2 happens, how much more money would we get? So the gain between those two numbers, they estimate it to be about $5.2 million. So what that is, it's that 3.8 of the additional state funding plus there's some tax revenue that we would actually get to keep, some more tax revenue we would get to keep based on how this bill is written. It does not include the disaster allotment, which is, I'm so thankful for, because that's not a fair deal for LaPorte, because we are one of the, a few that get that. So that means the amount, if you include that into the gain, we are disproportionately having to give much bigger raises than our neighbors.
Right.
And it sounds like a bad, I'm not trying to make that sound bad. We want to value people and give them the raises, but it's not fair for us to have to do that and someone who's not on the coast not have to do that.
Right, because
Right.
it also correlates to, that allotment correlates to all your recapture districts. All your big recapture districts.
It
The ones that
could.
pay the big bill.
But Houston ISD is not one of them, so Houston is the biggest.
Houston, East.
And Austin also. But you're right, there are, because of on the coast, you have the port and you do have the industry. So that's a very, very good point. So the way that they kind of figure out, they're going to tell you how much money you have to pay in salaries. So out of this gain, $5.2 million, 40% of that gain, so 40% times 5.2 is $2 million. So it must be, $2 million must be spent on compensation for employees. And then they go down and say, okay, employees, but 75% of that $2 million, which is $1.6 million, must be for teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians. So the reason I say hold off on saying how much you want, how much y'all want us to talk about the raise, because we have to abide by this. Again, this is an estimate. We don't really know what that is right now.
But
And
we can assume that we've got $1.6 million.
at this point, we can assume that. Today.
Is
But-
like,
You say.
can you spend more than that, or is that the max?
No, that's the limit,
You have
the
to-
minimum. You have to
you have
spend
to.
at least,
You can spend more, okay.
you absolutely, the board can
legislature
choose.
did this one time before, where we had to give classroom teachers
right.
a higher amount than we gave.
Right, so that's probably in 2021, 5% classroom teachers. That's probably what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's probably
Okay.
that year.
So kind of going back to this, this pretty much dictates how you decide how much you want to give a raise for. So one thing too, the last thing I want to say about this before we go to the next slide is whatever this amount is, Even if we don't know it, and I promise you, we will not know it by the time we are asking you on June 10th to approve this compensation.
Because it will not have been signed.
It
yet.
will not have, most likely it will not have been signed, and we don't really know. But whatever, the way that this bill is written, it's saying that gain is over what happens right now. So we just have to, meaning if we, whatever that teacher is paid right now, as long as we give them $1.6 million, or that group, that $1.6 million by that time, for the next year, even if we don't know what it is, we can always bump it up. We can fix it so that we will, because they're really not even going to have their calculations done until probably September, where we've already started paying our employees. We're started going. So there will be some salary adjustments is what I'm saying. And that's okay. It's okay because it's going to be more. We're never going to take away from them. You know, if we shoot a little higher, then wonderful. We shot a little bit higher. But we're never going to, so what I'm saying is it's okay to be a little conservative if you want, because we can make it up and do a salary adjustment for everybody to get them to what they need to be by law. Does that make sense?
But hypothetically, we could spend 100% of that 2 million on teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians, and then the rest of our staff use what we would normally do, like if we say a 2% bump or whatever,
You have that option.
for the others.
You absolutely can do that too. You don't, the board gets to choose.
I don't have that.
Yeah, the board gets to choose, so that's a decision that's laid on y'all. The board gets to choose, do I want to give whatever raise I'm giving to teachers, nurses, counselors and librarians to everybody? Whatever I choose on that, I'm giving it to everyone, or am I going to give it to that group and then do a different for everyone else? That's a choice you can do. And I could give you all different types of scenarios. We can give you all types of calculations so you can, but I need to know where you kind of want to go with that. That's the conversation to have. And if I don't know it today, that's totally fine. It's not, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Because I can go ahead and start doing different calculations and give you some ideas of what things might be.
I do want to have that discussion. I kind of just want to see where everybody get a gauge, a lay of the land, where everybody's head's at.
Well, let me keep going so you can, okay.
You tell me when.
I'm telling Stacy she'll hit the next slide.
Yes, sir. Okay, so now we have, I've kind of given you some costs here. So,
5 minutes.
as you look down here, we've got we have our Fund 199, which is our general fund, and then we have all other funds, which is like child nutrition and employees paid from grants and different things like that. So, in total, we have 1,100 employees. So, I gave you the 2% and a 3%. So, and then down here, just understand that as we go up 1% in a raise, looking at all funds, it's $600,000. If you look at just 199, it's 550. And I like to kind of break
That's every employee.
That is every employee.
That's not taking classroom teachers or
No.
whatever out of it.
This is every employee if we go across. So as you can kind of see, I've got down there an arrow that says somewhere between 4 and 5%. That's where you're going to have to choose based on that data that I had that you have to pay teachers in that group $1.6 million. So going on to the next slide, here's how you see that. So here's our groupings. We've got the 4 different types of positions and the number of employees in each position. Well, 4% is not going to get you to the 1.6 because it's only at like 1.39, right? But a 5% is 1.7. So somewhere in the middle of there, we have to do that for that group of employees. Is that...
Danny, for you, I say 5% for all employees. Based on, is that the number we have?
Repeat what we did in 2543. So our salary ranges.
Well, that was another part of
Far out of.
the proposed bill was talking about a proportion based on tenure. Did that go through? Is that tagged?
That's part of the sentence. So that could be tagged on.
Where you have to, right, well, they'll amend where it does have to be, your
Yeah,
tenure guys have to be this percent, this percent.
Right, so that,
Proportional.
right, you're exactly right. So like was said, right, it's been passed in the House as this, and I'm giving you the numbers based on what was passed in the House.
Okay, that's fair.
In the Senate, they're going to tack on, and in the Senate bills where you had longevity percentage, depending on the size of your district, you're going to get 5,000 for this teacher, that group, and depending on how many, 0 to 10 and
To
all
meet the
that.
requirement, does it need to be a salary increase, not a stipend?
Yes. Yeah, the way that this is written now, doesn't mean it's going to change, but the
Right.
way that it's written now, it is because they're going to continue to fund this, is what they're saying.
Biannually, they're gonna go with an increase. I did see that. So it is sustainable. Like, it's not something that we're just gonna live with, I know, we can't see the future, but based on what is proposed, it will be a funded going forward. It's not something like a one and done, which is why we use the stipends historically.
Right.
Because there was no funding to support a salary
correct.
increase.
Yeah.
So now at least it is funded, that if that's the direction we go, we've got some supplemental funds coming in. Jeff, I like that. Would anybody else got a different thought on that?
I like what we did in 2021, 5.3.
I think I'm on that same page.
I was looking at that too, but I said there's so many people that get screwed over, like the paraprofessionals. When you look at that, we've gone up like, I did the math a minute ago, like $2.50 in the last 10 years. So like that percentage, 4% is so low, they're not gonna get much of a bump. And then you got all these like, that 3% lumps in a lot of different people. Like central admin is different than a counselor, but they're all like administrators, right? So.
Well,
I
and
look around
and
the
the
room, like, some
counselors
of
would
these
be
people-
the 5%.
It is? Okay, but still, like,
Yeah.
so who, I guess maybe give me clarity
Okay.
then on who would not be included in that.
Anybody that's not a counselor.
If that is not their position, if they don't work as a counselor, they don't work as a librarian, a nurse, or a teacher, yeah. Everyone else, everyone in this room is not that.
Everybody in this room.
And everyone who works at child nutrition, everyone who works at transportation and maintenance, everybody.
But the previous slide where you have the 3.024, that's everybody.
That's everybody. So that's how
Right, that
much,
includes the paras that we're
Everybody.
talking about.
right, correct. So with just 5% for everybody, that's how much it would cost. 3 million.
What does that arrow mean? Like, is it falls in between there?
Yeah, somewhere between 4 and 5. Somewhere between 4 and 5 is what,
Half would probably hit 16.
So,
yeah, that's
Because I was with Deanne 100%, but then we look, I guess, unless my brain's foggy, I apologize. But if we adjust it, that's all, everybody gets 5%, right? That's
Yes.
just 4.5. But if we say it's a tiered system, we don't know the number, but it would definitely put us below that threshold.
it would, absolutely. It would be low, it would be
Below
lower.
the threshold, they would just put us below that.
lower than
3
3
million.
million.
Yeah.
And I can work that out for you.
No, I mean, the threshold to meet that salary requirement.
We would, no, you.
We would
you
still
have to-
meet the
no
part
matter
we
what,
have to
we can
meet for
make
the teachers, but it would just be a different percent for all the others.
Right, so what this is saying is, like 4.5, if you want, you could do a 0.5%, whatever. If you wanted to say 4.5, or if you wanted to say 5. What that means is, to $1.7 million is how much 5% raise is for these 497 employees. Again, too, let me point out, this is based on when we do the raise on their salary, not on the midpoint. And I didn't do it on the midpoint because,
We've always wanted you to do it on the salary.
yes, so I can go back and do that calculation.
well, no,
It's not gonna make that big of a difference.
Quite honestly, it's almost the same thing.
this
Not a big
slide
difference.
satisfies the law requirement, period. That's
Absolutely.
That's it. So that will get us to meet the law. What
Right.
we do above in addition to is at our discretion.
Because we're gonna have to be competitive with this raise,
Yeah.
assuming
Because
that all of the
everybody else
districts
is
are
having this
getting-
same conversation.
Right, yeah, right.
But we're also going to need to have to look at raising the new teacher salary, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
If that's, well, again, that's something I need the
My
board to tell us.
recommendation would be, how do we go out and still attract those younger folks that want to come if we're not going to raise that? Because we were not the highest, we were not the lowest either when they showed that graph. But you need to keep up with your
Well, in
competitors.
this area,
I'm trying to think of all
we
these
were
things.
Yeah, that's a good
we were not alone as being the lowest,
No.
but we were the lowest.
Right.
But we had company, but also, they were small districts, smaller districts like us. The other ones that are paying a lot are much larger.
Large.
Have we thought about maybe Deanne, like even all, to me, does it make sense to have like, when we do, say we do a 2 or 3 or 5, say this year we do 5, to me it makes sense to do like adjust the starting pay by the same percent. Like, is that
well-
not, like, make sense?
The meaning for the teacher salary?
For the- yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
we can calculate that out for,
I mean, 'cause that-
well, here's the thing, is like, when we have raised it in the past, I'm not really sure on how my understanding of how that was determined, and please speak up and let me know, is...
Well, I've been here, and I think I can help you.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Dr. Jackson? No, it was looking at what our constituents were doing, what our surrounding districts were doing, and then coming with an idea. Last year was the first year that we implemented the teacher pay scale.
But we didn't raise it for like 3 or 4 years, and Dan, you remember.
Right, and that's in your...
Yeah, we kept it at
that's one of your
6%.
slides.
We made a change, but we barely got to the 61, but we hadn't raised it in several
Right.
years here.
Yeah.
So 5% would take us to 64,000 as a starting salary right now.
Which would put you right where Channel View and Pearland are right now.
I'm just thinking though,
They'll be
again,
higher.
in my head though, if that was a consistent thing we do every year, like say some years we can't do a raise, then you're not gonna go adjust the starting pay. But if you keep it consistent, like they're not jumping ahead, like,
Yeah, because then.
That was the big problem, is they would jump ahead. That was
and
the
so if
problem.
you got,
Yeah, we don't.
And it's enticing
It
to
does.
a 22-year-old college graduate or a 30-year-old college graduate for that matter. The starting teacher salary is very enticing to a kid that is shopping school districts. And we can say what we want, but when we go to job fairs, we're looking for them, but they're shopping us, right? Because they just left 3 other job fairs. And so if you don't have the right kind of salary for them,
And I
it's gonna be
think that
hard.
kind of forces our hand, so to speak, if that's the direction we go. It's going to force the 5% because we don't want to have that gap close between the new and your tenured teachers. You want it to all the votes rise together. Something like that. Did someone else have another thought on that?
No, I mean, I think it makes sense.
I was just saying it now,
Just
I don't, I'm not the CFO, but if you, and when you increase the starting teacher salary, because we're trying to keep, and then we bump everybody else, it's gonna
Well,
make
that
that,
5%.
it's gonna make a 5% almost be a 7 or 8 sometimes, am I correct?
Well, no,
If you're a
because...
tenured staff member.
No, because they're already, all of our employees already fall in that teacher pay salary. So if you increase that, we would have to increase
Naturally.
all of those.
Didn't we say we had a problem last time increasing the beginning pay for first-year teachers? They were getting about the same, they're starting off at the same thing then if you do.
That's the second
That's when we made
Yeah.
that's when we changed it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why we have to move everything together. You
That's
can't
what-
do one
Everybody has to.
or not the other. We
Yeah.
all have.
when you don't keep it the same, like say like, well, this year we're gonna do 1,000, but everybody else is getting, I don't know, like 5% raise, it's not equal. Or conversely, like if we're gonna give a $4,000 teacher increase, like on the starting pay, but we do a 2% increase here, it's out of whack.
That's how it gets out of
Well, if your
whack.
starting salary is 60,000, say, and you go 2%, and you raise that 2%, and you raise that person at 60,000, 2%. First year, second year teachers are making the same exact amount. Am I right?
That was happening.
That's what we're saying. We created a gap now.
We've created.
Yeah,
You just have to
that's
flow
That
it
used to
together.
happen in this district,
Yeah.
yes. But it doesn't anymore.
Ms. Jackson, do you by any chance know what the average teacher salary is?
it's just 7,000.
Yeah.
69.
It's on here.
It's at the bottom of that one slide, 69,707, I think.
Sorry,
Yeah, you see it? Okay.
it's on here big as Dallas.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
69,707.
You know, and just because we're having a conversation about it, board, I want to just respectfully remind us, the districts that we're really trying to compare ourselves to with the salaries that are there, they've taken advantage of some things that we're eventually going to have conversations about with the tax rates and things like that, because there's more money coming into their districts.
Yes.
Am
People
I
still
correct?
max out, I mean, some of these, if you're a teacher, everybody's gonna get the 5%, if we do a 5% raise, there's no maximum salary.
No, there is no maximum salary for a teacher. They can continue to increase it. It is written into this House bill that no one can a teacher cannot you can't increase their pay over $15,000, and none of ours would do that. So,
Board, if you could give us direction and say you want it to be at 3 or 2 or 1 or 4 or 5, at least Stacy can go back with her team and George and her team and start at least putting that together, and at least you'll kind of see where we are.
Doc, unless somebody says otherwise, I think I would like to see a 5% across the board, including our new teacher, and keep that aggregate the same and intact. I think that is, I think it's realistic, and I think it's something we need to entertain.
Stacy, from a finance standpoint, I mean, you feel comfortable with that?
well, from what we're saying, we're going to get 3.8 million additional funding. Plus, and that doesn't include the 1.2 million, so like for the insurance. So we are given this money, and they want it to be used for salaries for teachers, nurses, counselors, and
Right.
librarians. It's the purview of the board to say, do you want that to go across the board for everybody, or do you want that to be a tiered system and say, we know we have to do it for them. I mean, it's less of a financial burden, and I hate to say the word burden because
We're happy
paying
to
someone
do
is
it,
not a
yeah.
burden.
Right.
We're paying them because they do excellent jobs and we need them. Desperately, we need them. It is less costly. How about that? It's less costly if you do a tiered system. But that again is up to the board to decide. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Martin had the point, you know, if you give less than that, you have a morale issue, then you also,
Right.
your paras, how is that, you know, what's that really going to look like for them?
I think that's been a reoccurring theme. I feel like I hear that a lot from this board. We don't want anybody to feel like we're isolating a group or getting preferential treatment. We're in this together. We're all one family, and I feel like there's a reason that people do what they do, and there's a reason past boards have done what they've done. And I think we have an opportunity to do something different. And if we did it this way, would it kind of quell those rumblings and say, look, we're trying to take this whole thing forward because we're responsible for the whole thing, not just a
Right.
piece, not a campus, not a population, the whole thing. So making sure that, you know, it is comprehensive, and that's my opinion. Anybody's free to speak otherwise.
So I do have one question, just to make sure I'm clear on it. They expect us to spend 40% of this gain on compensation.
Which would be 2 million on
Right.
all
So
employee compensation.
What are they expecting us to spend the other 60% on?
Well,
Well, part of it's going to be this increases in security or things like that.
well, no, they
That's
right.
what
They want us to spend it on the allotment. So you're saying the other 60% of this?
Just making sure that if we throw all of this to the raises, which I think is a great idea, I'm not, just making sure that, you know, we're going to be able to cover the other expenses they're going
There's big other
to,
expenses there.
that they're going
Well,
to be expecting us to cover.
I think that's the point of the basic allotment is that they are recognizing that
Okay.
they have not dealt with inflation,
Right. Well, no,
which
they
is
haven't.
utilities, which is property insurance, which is everything, you know,
cost
a
of
cost
But part
of
of
the board.
that 3.8 million is for those things, correct?
Yeah, that's the other
That's what I'm saying.
60%.
Yeah, take
That's the other
If we
60%.
take that whole
Well,
amount and
and-
start putting it towards salaries, then,
We're spilling over $1 million. You know, $2 million is the 40% that
Right.
we're being allocated, but it's minus the approximate gain.
Right,
It doesn't
right.
have the 1.2 million. So, and I hate to say that that's free money. It's not. There's no such thing.
No,
But
it's
the board,
definitely
but
not.
the
It's owed
legislature
money.
has given reasonable assurance for the biennium that they're
Correct.
gonna fund this in perpetuity.
And we've never had that. And we've
Yeah.
never had that before. We've always had.
But we've been
one
given
without
that reasonable
safety net
assurance.
saying, if we do this, we could put ourselves in a bad position.
Right, and
I
that's
think
what
that's-
I'm normally saying in these meetings.
That's
but
been removed.
They put that that language in the bill, that it would be funded, and so I
I mean,
guess we
like,
have
they're,
to
you know,
trust.
like you're talking about they're paying us $10 per student for the police officers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is some of that going to be coming out of this?
It's going to come out of that gain, yes.
Yeah,
The
that's
state
what I'm
funding
saying.
gain.
Like, so.
But for this district, and Karen, that's a very good question.
It is.
But for this district, we're already doing it anyway.
Right, but
That
all I'm
other
saying is,
districts
and
that-
I get that, but it's like, just making sure that as we look forward
And
to
we don't
this, that
back
we're.
ourselves into a corner here.
Exactly,
Right.
because there's other expenditures that we have to cover.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take what y'all said, and we're going to kind of work the numbers and make sure, I mean, yeah, I gave,
5%?
yeah, I'm sorry, John.
I
Well,
still
yeah,
would like to see the tier system.
You're very articulate.
And I'll do that. I will absolutely, yeah, we will have
I just
that.
didn't know what we had. She said, I
Yeah.
was, you were going to take what we said. I'm like, I don't even know where we landed. But
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
5%, that's.
Well, if
Do
we
you
look
wanna see
at
the-
the opening slides talking about the issues we wanted to address, I think we've kind of,
Closed session.
we touched on, I'm sorry, let me get back to this, guys.
Yes.
Starting teacher salaries.
Starting teacher salary, I feel like we've addressed that. I feel like the substitute pay, I think
We can.
You're happy with that?
I think we're happy with I'm just going down this list.
Behavioral support.
Hang
The
on.
behavioral support, I think that's a big one and something that we prioritize. I think that's an excellent initiative. I definitely feel confident in that. Substitute pay, we feel comfortable in that. That was a concern.
Yeah,
Oh, I like the changes in substitutes.
I like their suggestions that they thought of too.
The police officers and security,
Do we need to give her a number of what we're thinking for the substitute pay and change in 60 hours and degree holding?
I thought,
I thought what they suggested was great.
Yeah.
So the 110. She
Yes,
said
that was
110.
good.
From 100?
From 100 to 110,
And then 100.
and 125 if you're a certified teacher. So if I myself am going to go in there, I have a degree, but I don't have a degree in teaching, I would get 110.
and I also like the incentive, I may heard it, I don't think it's $20, but the adjusted rate on Fridays. I think that's another.
Mondays and
Mondays and Fridays.
That's a great idea.
So we will work on that to implement that for this next year.
The only thing we have not touched on stipend and Mr. Shopping.
Okay, and I have that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, are we ready
Stipend.
to rock and roll on here? So I did want to give you this, just to let you know that right now, the way that this is written, the legislation, one-time stipend does not meet the requirements to hit that 1.6 million. So I wanted to give you that because we've given you these numbers in the past of what a stipend, a $1,000, $1,500, or $2,000 stipend,
I
but
think we're in a different position this year.
we are, and so this really is not an option to meet that $1.6 million estimate that we have to.
And the other question is, and we don't have to really go into it too deeply, but a lot of times, the time we did it, I think we made certain that we could make it TRS eligible, but a lot of times stipends are not considered TRS eligible.
Right.
And, you know, people eventually want to have that.
Yes, sir. Okay. So one of the questions was how do we, to review our stipends and what we do. And so I wanted to give you an idea and kind of give you a little background. So like Ms. Jackson said, we participate in the TASB stipend study. And so we get all the data. It's not just athletics and fine arts. It's for all stipends. And so also in your compensation book, that you have a little yellow tab, and that's the start. So if you wanted to reference any of the stipends, that's in there. So I kind of I wanted to provide y'all all the different type of stipends, how many we actually paid last year, and the cost of it in the different departments. So academics, we all understand what that is. That's UIL, it's masters, it's anything to do with in the classroom, right? Athletics are our different coaches, and we have child nutrition. So child nutrition gets attendance incentive stipends, and they also get, Ralph, let me have, if they take a class, and they get,
We reimburse, I don't know if that counts as this.
well, we reimburse them for that, but then there's other different things that our child nutrition gets. Fine arts are for again, all of these are in here, but I'm not going to go through them, but you do have fine arts. Games are in for any of our athletic games, so if that's your ticket takers, that's your working the scoreboard and different things like that. And so it's a supplemental, so you have stipends and then you have supplemental pay. So on this, it's interchangeable. Summer school is if we're paying anyone to work extra in summer school. This is not base pay for teachers. That's not what this is. It's if someone comes in and tutors and things like that. I don't want you to think we just spent $2,000 on summer school last year. Technology and then transportation, again, has stipends. Last year, y'all approved to give a $1,000 stipend to if they were ASC certified or a master tech and different things like that. And then they also have attendance stipends for coming to work and being there. And also recommending or being what's that called?
So they have the sign-on and...
Sign-on. The sign-on bonus and referral bonuses. So in 2024, we paid, 1,400 employees different stipends in a total of $1.5 million in supplemental pay to our employees. So I believe the question was, okay, if we increased it with whatever, how do we look at that? So I gave you, okay, across the board, and this again is the summary. It's not going to be I can give you the data of how much this will be for each of those stipends that's listed, but this is summary level. The total of a 5% increase would be about $79,000. And if we increased all of those stipends by 10%, it would be $157,000. And then the next slide is if we did it annually. So if you start now, it's the biggest bang for your buck. Like it's cost the district the most. So for 5%, it would be, this next year would cost us $78,000 to increase all of those stipends by 5%. Then the next year, it gradually goes up because it compounds. So next year would be $86,000.
But your raise may not be 5%.
No, it might not. So I just,
I know you do that.
I just kind of I wanted to visually show you how it compounds if you go along with the raise.
In the past, correct me if I'm wrong, we have kind of, I would say, picked and choose what stipends were hot buttons at the time. At one point in time, we were focused on math and science stipends and different athletic stipends and fine art stipends, different things. We've just kind of, henpecked around and adjusted as needed.
Yes.
But I don't think, in my opinion or in my experience, I don't think we've ever done an across-the-board increase. And maybe now would be the time that we need to do that because some of those have not been touched in a long time.
Yeah. And I'll agree with you that I spoke to Frankie, who's our payroll manager, and who's been here for many, many years, and I walked through this presentation with her to kind of get her thoughts, and you're correct. It's never been an across-the-board raise for all of them. It's been
So we're
as
doing across the
needed.
board raise or across the board stipend for a stipend? It's going to be a raise, and we're going to continue
5% raise on your stipend.
It would be a 5% raise on your stipend.
every year.
It doesn't have to be every year. It can be, that's up to the board.
We get in a stipend raise.
But I'm not saying.
But
that
not
we
all
have to
of,
do
not
it
all of,
like
not
that.
all of theirs do
I
that.
don't know, I just know
They
what
do not.
coaches do. I'm not sure about all the other stipend parts of it all,
No,
but.
in the neighboring district, it's only extracurriculars, so fine arts and athletics. They have a midpoint system.
Yeah.
And so whatever the raise, so let's say they got a 2% raise that year, that their stipend would be on a 2% raise on that midpoint of that. That district is the only district in all of Region 4 that does something like that. And it's only for those two, for,
Subset.
yes, for
But if we
athletics.
increased all of them this year, that wouldn't mean that we would have to do it next year.
Absolutely not. You absolutely do not have to do that.
You could do an adjustment, like you said, it's been years.
But that would be a nice
Yeah.
adjustment if you've not had one ever.
Yeah, a 5 or a 10%.
Yeah.
I'm open to whatever the board thinks at this point.
I think it's needed.
What do you think is needed, 5 or a 10?
5.
Your recommendation was to seek the match of the raise. Whatever the
I want whatever the
raise
raise is.
is, whatever the annual raise is,
Yeah.
that the stipend match that percentage. Correct?
Makes
Is that what
sense.
you said?
I mean, that makes sense to me.
And
But
then
we're not
next
gonna
year,
give
Those
them
haven't
5%
been
raise every
adjusted
year.
in a very
We can't
long
do that.
time. Maybe we should do 10 and then we don't have to do them again for a while.
Under the additional information, some of them have the notes about 2 and 2 and all that, but not all of them have that.
Right. So there would just be one for that. It's
just one.
Unless it's an
So
hourly
we
rate.
currently only have one coach with 10 to 19 years of in-district coaching experience.
No, I think that,
That's who's looking at me like, huh?
Should be Ricky and Butler.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I feel like
oh, no, that's blank.
An unlimited amount.
Yeah.
At time to a certain number.
Right,
okay,
that's,
so we don't have a quantifiable number on how many of
Where you see the
Oh,
coaches,
yeah.
that means that there's,
That's what
it's
positions are
designated that
there.
there's 2
Right.
assistant coaches for that sport or whatever the number.
Right, well, that's where it says number of available stipends, correct?
That just means like at the junior high, there's only 2
And then-
positions for that.
right.
Correct.
Only
Right,
2
and then
people are
under
going to get that.
additional information,
But if it's blank, it's open-ended, so it could go to as many people who meet that criteria.
Yeah, where it says stipend amount, the number of available stipends, and then additional information. It doesn't actually say how many we actually have currently.
Right. I do have that information though, and I could send that to you.
I mean, just,
I ran it too, because the way you want to look at this is you don't look at this your list and say, okay,
Because some years we don't have some of these.
correct.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I would like to see what the actual is.
Right.
And then what that actual would look like at a 5 and a 10.
Right. And so that's what this is.
That's
I
what
took these numbers. Yes, ma'am.
The one,
That's what this is.
got it, okay.
Mason had a suggestion.
No, I agree with Dan's 10%.
I agree with that too. I just like,
Do a
well,
one.
this year, whatever y'all decide percent was, I don't know. I never thought about the longevity stipend for coaches, and that's a great thing. I love that. I just wish we could include like transfer, maybe all of everybody. Like, if you're doing these things for X amount of years, why is it only, I guess, the coaching staff that gets the longevity? I'm not saying for this year, but I just want to throw it out there. Like, maybe in subsequent years we can look at doing it. I keep thinking, I don't know, I keep going back to like bus drivers. It's really hard to get and keep
Placement
bus
of bus
drivers.
driver.
So if you got bus drivers out there, I know a bus driver that's been in the district 25, 30 years, about to retire. But like, it would be nice to give them a longevity stipend, right? I don't want to take anything away from coaches, I'm not saying. But like, why do we not do that for everybody?
No, I agree.
Well,
Good point.
isn't it difficult to get people to get their license to drive for the coaches and stuff?
Well, they all at least give a stipend for it.
Right.
They do get a stipend for having a CDL.
We give them.
So for the longevity
That other
thing, it's kind of like,
district
hey, thanks for
No,
doing
they
this so
don't.
long. Even though nobody else will do it.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Well, it's not too late, Jeff. I mean, if you wanted to do a stipend for longevity on, say, a bus driver, I mean, how many bus drivers do we have? 45? 45, man, I'm good at this. I asked her like 5 seconds ago. But if you gave them $1,000 stipend, that's $45,000, and it shows that they're appreciated. I don't know.
Well, not all of them are going to meet that.
Huh?
No, they're not, if it's a longevity, they're not all going to meet that. It would be
No,
like
I know,
if they.
I'm worst case scenario.
Oh, okay.
They start giving the stipends now, incrementally, as it goes. It's hard for them to want to leave.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. You're not going to get me away from Deer Park because my stipends are so good.
It's the neighboring district.
And
It's the
the
neighboring
neighboring-
district. It's not-
Sorry, the neighboring district. But it's
The one that showed.
$10,000 pay cut. A lot. Being there 32 years, I mean, it's, and the longer they stay there, the longer those stipends keep coming up. They go, oh, I can't go to that school over there because I'm gonna lose money.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna
they'll
lose
stay.
$2,000.
They'll stay, and they won't leave.
If the board chooses to do, whether it's the 5 or 10, if you do the 10, you probably, or if you plan to do it again next year, you probably shouldn't do the 10, is what I'm
I would
saying.
do the 5, and then that way we
If
do
you're
have
planning to do this in
some,
perpetuity, you probably don't
you know,
want to do
because
that.
I think sometimes giving them, more frequently matters too, even if it's not as much, just because they feel like we're recognizing.
I think
it.
5 even is going to speak volumes to.
I do like the idea that Russell had, that we, whatever we give, we attach to the stipend.
So if next year we don't give a raise, there's no increase in stipend. If we go 2%, it's 2% on
Yeah.
the stipend, something.
I mean, I think that's a good
That's
idea.
basically how you got to where you are.
And I know we've had conversations, before about just attracting and keeping some of these stipend positions that are more difficult, the junior high levels and cheer coaches and things like that,
You got sale aides and ESP aides. There's a bunch of other things in there that would be, benefit from us.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So
We've
I
got
think
some people
I think
working
collectively,
DSP and
I think
sales
we
in there forever.
we're sending a good message to the district in terms of our affirmation and support. I still think we're being fiscally responsible. I know it's a lot of money. There's no such thing as not a lot of money in this business. It's a lot of money, but I think it's well placed. I think that I feel comfortable, in making those proposals, and we'll see how it looks. But board, is there any other? You feel good about everything that's out? Do you have anything else to say on this?
So is it 5 or 10? For the,
I think 5.
So what I'm going to,
Stipend, but I also want in general. I like the general too.
well, yeah, I'm talking about 5.
Are we gonna have Stacy bring us these numbers? 5, 4, 3, just so we
yes,
can look at it?
I absolutely will.
Yeah.
We'll have that to you by Friday.
5, 4, 3 versus 5 total.
Do you want, I'm going to bring it back up so we can kind of look at it again, because I just want to clarify what you did in 20 and 21. So it was 5 for the classroom, 4 for paras, and 3 for everyone else. Is that how you want it to, that's how you want it broken down? by classification.
So,
So, the para is any, we classify a para as any, is that a classroom para?
No.
no,
Or is that every para?
Say it again, I'm sorry, Stacey.
Would that be a classroom para?
That would be clerical.
The way that we, yeah,
at the bottom.
Hourly employees.
Could,
Hold on, let me see.
No, I know, I just said.
we could.
Oh.
Well, if we get the numbers and compare, then we can do that discussion today.
so how about I do this? So I'm going to have different classifications of positions, and I will give you what the amounts are.
And then we just add it up.
And then you can play with it as you want, and I'll give you a couple of different scenarios of this, and then you can say, okay, well, that's great, but change this one out with this one and tell me how much that is.
Yeah, because
And that way we
I'm a
can-
person, and if
Yeah.
I had the dry erase board, I can sit there and do
Right.
I can add real good.
So let me, I'm gonna do this the way it is here, and then I'm gonna give you a couple other suggestions based on what your conversation has been tonight
Okay.
that you might want to think about, and then we can go from there. And then I will do the 5% for the stipends, and then, again, it's at y'all's will every year if you want to continue with that or not, based on the financial capability and capacity that we have that year. That sound great? Is there anything else that we can help you with tonight?
In general for me, Danny, and I apologize, because Karen and I had this conversation, you mentioned it tonight, what triggered it, I forgot to tell Danny. The continuing, she kind of hinted the continuing education. I know we do a lot of stuff on training, but I think when we talked, it was about like how to train. It kind of, I like that we're addressing that with the elementary level, with getting these 7 people in there, but like for junior high, high school, on, when I say continuing education, parents, don't think I'm wrong, but like teaching them how to manage the higher percentage of SPED and behavioral SPED specifically in their classrooms. Like, I know last year we cut it back, I think it was exactly $100,000, because I know, and the comment was we got better, and I'm sure that's the case, but like, if there's anything in the budget we can put to help, I don't know, I mean, I'll
I think
defer
one
to
of the
you.
things that concerns me is we've got a number of teachers that are coming out that are going through alt certification. So they're not getting in their student teaching and the opportunities to really learn from a mentor that they watch and, follow and do.
Right.
And, I can remember when, Dr. Jackson started hearing me saying this, but we had the opportunity to do Capturing Kids' Hearts. And I can tell you the number of teachers that impacted for the better. And I mean, they had a better relationship with the students. Teachers think, oh, I have a great relationship. I'm their friend. That is not a great relationship. I mean, you're not,
Right.
So it's just teaching teachers how to do these things. And if we don't have teachers that if they can't develop relationships, it doesn't matter how much literacy training they have, because their kids aren't learning yet.
Right.
And that's what Jeff and I were talking about, is we really need to make sure we've got kids, opportunities for teachers, even our ones that have been around a long time, because kids have changed, and some of them are great, and some of them need,
Julie's taking notes
opportunity.
of that, and we've had this conversation,
Yes,
and
we
I'm
have.
not tired of hearing you say it. I'm Capturing Kids' Hearts trained too. I'm on
Yes.
staff was at one time.
It's a great program.
We have people that are still here with that, but, here's just one thing I'll say. Even with the work that we're doing with Region 4 and having people come in, we gotta make sure that we're not sending them 4 different messages. Because one consultant comes in and says, I need y'all to do it this way. See, Captain Kid's Heart comes in and says, I need you to do it this way. So there is not a right or wrong way. There has to be training to do those things. And so I just want to say to the board, we've invested heavily in trying to do some of these things, and we will continue to do that. So Julie, I'll defer to you and your team in helping make sure we get the people in to make this something that we can do system-wide and even better and
And
deeper.
if we, when you have, what Jeff was talking about, when you have a student in your classroom that's maybe part of the BSP or the SAIL program
Yes.
that does have a behavior intervention plan, and we do the best we can. I was in special ed for a long time. Those plans get handed out at the beginning of the year. But how much conversation is actually had with the teacher that receives those plans? How do you implement a behavior intervention plan when you're one teacher, there's 28 kids in the room, and you've got one that just threw a desk across the room?
Hold on, reread it.
Yeah, hang on, I'm gonna hang out a little, I'm gonna pray the aide walks by and sees I have a problem. I know you can press the button and all this kind of stuff, but it's just, teachers need to know, like, what does that mean, private discussions about behavior? You know, does that mean you pull them out in the hall and leave everybody inside? Or does that mean you quietly walk by and maybe develop a system where you put a blue sticky note on there that means, I need you to sit down and be quiet? It's just things like that that we need to do.
We certainly receive it, and we're going to do something about it.
And I'm not asking for the world on it. I mean, I'm not married to this, but what if it's like each campus gets $3,500 a year, and at the discretion of the campus, this is a hypothetical, they get picked, like, you know, because you guys are already doing y'all's trainings. I'm saying that in addition to what we already do with all the stuff that, with your Region 4, all those things that we have, I'm sure I'm not the only one. We get a lot of requests from the people that talk to me about, man, I'd like some more. You know, when I was a kid, I remember my mom complained, like, we go to too much of this. Like, but I think people are still, like, maybe on the campus level, if there's something fun and innovative, if we give them extra, I don't know, $30,000 to their campus, the campus administrative team could come up with an idea, like, that they think would be a good fit for that particular campus. Does that make sense?
Those particular needs, because every campus may have,
Has
has
different
different
needs,
needs,
has
you
But I'm
know.
not asking for like, I'm not asking, I know we cut back because we, you know, budget rights, but like, I'm not saying we put another 100,000 into it. Just something.
Because have we ever ever teach general ed teachers how to have a focus kid in your classroom? They don't know what to do with them, so that a lot of them are like, oh no, I wouldn't know what to do. But if you train them, you know, it makes a big difference.
It does.
Thank you for your work and great presentation. I feel like it's been
Yes, thank
productive.
For them too,
Thank you all.
they did great. Thank y'all so much. If y'all, you know where we are. Y'all
Thanks for having it at this point in the budget
Oh, thank you.
process.
Well, it was the other board meeting. It was,
okay.
but that's okay. I was here and it was great.
But it was this one.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
I know we're closing
this
out
is
this deal, but obviously it coincides with building a budget at some point. Just hypothetical, just because it's come up. If there are any programs or supplemental things that we can, the bullying programs, the anti-bullying, I know there's initiatives and stuff like that. Is there anything out there that we're just not aware of that we can look and maybe earmark in our budget for something to subsidize the anti-bullying campaign? I don't know what it is. I have no
Like
idea.
grants or things like that.
Or to make sure
grants
it's
or
at least
anything.
consistent across campuses, especially starting elementary and moving up to,
Right.
Again, merging together, because I know some campuses have things, I can't remember which one Rizzuto had, but they have different ones, but they're not all doing the same thing. You
And I
know?
know it's not directly to the night with compensation. I just, in the back of my mind, it just came up. Something else to consider. Again, it's just money, right?
It's one of our best things, like, I'm looking at Ralph, like that free lunch, I mean, breakfast for all those kids.
Oh,
That was through a grant, right? Am I mistaken?
It was through the state. I mean,
Oh, state, is it something you had to apply for?
Federal program.
Yes, you have to apply.
Right, so like, there's gotta be, I don't know, we go to these trainings, we hear like, there are different districts that utilize as like consultant, if you will, to write grants. I know Jennifer's done a great job. We have a lot of people in the district that write grants and do a great job, but I know there's outside agencies that can help us with that. So I don't know, like what the cost is, or how you get paid percentage based upon what they bring in, I don't know.
There are consultants that come in and help you write grants if you know, and so we do that here, but, the bullying thing, Mr. President, and to the board, we're gonna bring something back to you in the summer, okay, about what our plans are to unveil or how we're gonna try to do this. But part of it is gonna be, and this is gonna get me in a world of trouble, we gotta work with the parents.
That's a
Yes.
large.
And I
part
keep
of it.
hearing everybody say what the teachers got to do, what the schools got to do, what the districts got to do. But at some point, we got to figure out how do we get people to help us with this?
Right.
Because the school system cannot do it all by themselves.
No, we can't.
And I'm not being defensive about it. I'm just saying, we got to come up with a way that, Todd had several parent engagement kind of things, and we plan to do and continue to do that. But we've got to get to a point to where it's a community effort and it's not
If you could
us
find
trying
that
to train
maybe
all of these folks
Some
ourselves.
training out there that helps to train
Yes.
the district in how to best include parents
Yes,
in the situation,
Right.
so that parents feel like they have a say
right.
and that they're heard.
Right.
I think what's one of the biggest things I see is that I feel like sometimes parents have gone to the principal's office or whatever, and granted, they didn't get the answer they wanted, and it could be for a variety of reasons, but they just don't ever feel like they're truly heard.
It's got to be a collaborative effort.
It's got to be a collaborative.
Bottom line, it's got to be
Yes.
collaborative.
Yes.
and not one
And
side.
can we like fix the website so people can actually find, evidently they can't find anybody's email addresses, so they go straight to the Facebook page and find out? Can y'all tell me how to get in touch with somebody? Because evidently the website, I'm just messing with you.
Whatever
on that.
feature I'm thinking.
But, you know, I mean, for heaven's sakes, they can't find McConnell's ad.
Where's the bullying hotline?
World.
That's what we need.
There isn't a number.
We have an anonymous
I'd like to
reporting
say, though-
hotline that we do every day.
Well, it says Florida.
I would like to say, I have talked to my kids extensively about this topic at different times in their schooling. And I can tell you right now, my student has told me that she feels much better about the situations now than she did when she was younger. She says she feels like their people are more aware of it, that some of the cases do seem a little bit more severe, but the kids are older now than they were. But she said that she does not feel as threatened by bullying as she expected to. And that's her words. So I understand some children have a different experience.
Sure.
And every child's different.
Right.
But my child who did have problems in elementary school is telling me she feels better about her circumstances now and the people around her. So I just want to say that there are some positive things happening. I know other kids are not having the same experience. Every day kids have different experience, but I do appreciate the efforts that have gone into place so far, and I know that we'll continue to make strides.
We have I'm a throw on the bus. There's an employee of our district that has shared with me a couple of times some really amazing parent engagement things that happen in his old district. He may or may not be in communications. But so some of those things that he shared with me, we could definitely incorporate into our partners education program. You get the people at the chamber, these businesses to help. They talk about feeding parents to get them on the campus to teach them different things. And there's some really cool ideas. I think that the district, you guys do not necessarily have to spend money. You could really embrace, like, there's a lot of businesses out there that I think we could help with those initiatives. If Adam Holland would share some of those with you. Oh, I mean, that guy that I was talking about.
You know what's ironic is I still remember taking a class. I was in 7th grade, and your grandmother and my mom, and there's 20 or 30 moms. It was just moms. And they took this class and they split us up, and the kids did an activity and the parents and all this stuff, and found out all kinds of things about our parents. But it was engaging. They were taking on a training that went over time, and it's just hard to get people to engage in that manner anymore. But I did try to explain there's some legislation out there that could help our cause in terms of returning some of the authority back to administrators and teachers to mitigate some of that stuff. But yeah, we need the parents to be involved, be very involved. Board, we're going to go back up to item 5, Dr. Martinez.
Good evening, board. President Hanks, Dr. Jackson, thank you all for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. Before I get started, I just wanted to recognize our bus drivers. Today is National School Bus Driver Appreciation Day. So it was pretty special. We went out, we have Director Rice over there. We went out to her team to send them off to go pick up our kids today, and so it was a great time. And so Alyssa does a fantastic job managing that department. So just wanted to recognize.
Driving to the war zone this year to get to my house.
Yeah, it is a war zone over there.
So, next month, we'll be able to give you a more comprehensive update in regards to our facilities, and particularly the stadium. Very hopeful that we already have the assurances to host our milestone events next month. But just to be able to get, as we get closer to completion with the stadium, to be able to share those updates along with the near completion for the Legacy Complex. So I hope to be able to share that with you all next time. So the one that we're looking at specifically for this meeting is concerning the GMP number 1 for LaPorte High School that has to deal with the additions and renovations. So just the estimate project cost for that, which includes the construction estimate and the soft cost. We'll give you that project estimate there.
Let's jump back. Go back.
Yep.
Can we start at are we over budget?
No.
So these are the initial calculations that we received. We are not over. That just has to do with what was built in with the different funding sources for those projects. So we're definitely not over budget for any of those.
I'm saying that
Anything else to add?
We're not over budget.
I know you're saying
Sure, we're not over budget.
I would
Right.
say that too, I just.
Yeah,
No,
that
we were,
number
I'd
in the
say we were.
parentheses makes me think
Yeah,
we
that's the
are.
problem, it's the way this is.
Yeah, it's the
presented.
way-
We're under budget technically on the Fort High
Yeah.
School.
Correct,
reading
correct.
part, correct.
Yeah.
Which makes us not over budget.
And again, it has to deal with the funding
The bond
sources.
total is.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
But the
we're
stadium
in a good
itself,
spot.
Is it over budget, the stadium? I know I've asked you this a
He's not
hundred
gonna say
times.
that.
No.
No, we're not. Everything's looking good on that.
I wonder if he's gonna say it.
So yeah, no, we are.
It's in the public.
That's what I'm saying.
We are in a great spot with all of our projects, but specifically, the one that I'm going to be talking about today has to deal with LaPorte High School with the addition and renovations. And so, this GMP number one, within that is the approximately 4.8 million that you guys would be looking at for consideration. GMP number one includes a lot of the demolition, portable buildings. You're not going to get to see till GMP number two, more of the actual renovations, the gymnasium, those types of things.
Where will the portable buildings be?
So just to the east of the kind of front entrance area, that's the designated space for those
Not directly in
portables.
front of the high school, but just to the.
And when is that?
So we'll get to the timeline, but basically, as soon as, you guys consider, approve, if that's your wish, then we would communicate with the builders the notice to proceed.
And board, Dr. Bromley has shared this several times before
Yeah.
y'all, several times.
I
in
just didn't
public
hear
meetings.
I just didn't know where the portable building, I was just
All
curious.
right, all right.
Yeah, no,
No worries.
but,
One year they put them in the senior parking lot.
Yeah.
Not.
so we definitely need the parking spaces.
Especially for graduation.
Yeah.
Correct.
They won't be in place by
They won't be
graduation.
in place by then. And we will make sure of that because we gotta have parking and all of those.
No, so you're not even looking until June.
Yeah, it's June.
Until the projects would essentially start. I'll jump to that here in a
We gotta
second.
get all those people out of the high school too. It
I'm
takes
all over the
several
place.
weeks. That's okay, that's okay. That's a good question.
So again, the final GMP number one for that early release package cost as submitted for approval is $838,415. The schedule for that, here is the estimate schedule. So I know it's kind of hard to read on your paper, but you can see right over here, mobilization, survey layout, install fencing, all this has to do with portable buildings and getting that site ready, which would start really June 2nd would be our target date, but even before then. So as soon as we have students vacate that building, we would be in the process of having those delivered, ready to go. We're looking at permits right now for those buildings along with the demolition, but construction would start very quickly for the projects associated with GMP number one. And like I said, GMP number two would be more of the gym, the actual, the construction. But this is a lot of the demolition, the HVAC, rerouting some of that, and the walkways and designating those. So that's all included with the GMP number one. Here's our milestone summary, the estimate. If you guys consider that for approval tonight, then I would communicate with our Gallagher and then Telipson about our notice to proceed for procurement. That would, I would text them as soon as this meeting is concluded, let them know, and that would start that process. And then we're looking at construction to begin on June 2nd. So this is, for GMP number one, we're looking at finishing up in August, right? So our goal is to have areas so that students could be, able to navigate through the hallways, get to where they need to go. But, you have completion of this whole renovation would not be until July of 2026. So this is just that initial phase. You're going to have an opportunity to look at GMP number 2, which would be the completion of that project, and that would get us to July 2026.
Just a couple of weeks ago, Bobby and I went to the high school and had a conversation with this similar presentation about what that looks like to them, and it was actually well received.
Do we know how, only because I got a couple questions this week, will the, I know about the trailers, but what about the cafeteria? Is that going to be able to be utilized during the construction?
Yeah, cafeteria will be accessible. That shouldn't be a problem.
There's just going to be some navigation through for wayfinding for kids, but the cafeterias and all that will still be used.
So again, there's a total amount, there's a budget information of where the funding sources would be. As I receive the communication this evening, I'll notify with the Telepsin, to proceed, and we'll be able to start on that official construction schedule. We did have a couple of questions about, the renderings that came up. I know Saturday that came up with some of the community members that were present. And so we're able to capture some of the renderings, make sure they're posted on the website. So they're there.
And you have them in your email as well, too.
It was like a,
Saturday was the prayer at the schools.
Friday.
Friday.
Okay.
Good Friday, I'm sorry.
Prayer walk.
That's there.
Did I miss something?
For everyone to access or to have access to. So just, the renderings of the space. And
It's on our website now.
Yeah, thank y'all for doing that.
That'll be
share that with
Because people want to see it. Yeah.
high school staff has access to that, they know where to go. So appreciate you guys for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for it?
No, glad it's up there.
All right.
Thank you.
You need a motion to approve it?
I seek a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, call for a vote. All right. Thank you, sir.
Let them know. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, with all matters discussed,